a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Imagine this scenario. It's 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. A high-altitude nuclear detonation triggers a continental EMP and the U.S. power grid collapses in seconds. Vehicles stall mid-lane on every interstate from Miami to Seattle. Aircraft lose flight controls and start dropping out of the sky. Cellular networks, internet, satellite, all of it goes dark in the same instant. Across the country, people pull out phones that will never turn on again, twist ignition keys that will never turn over, and stand in driveways looking up at a silence that has no parallel in American history. This is not an outage. This is a permanent shift, and the silence is just the beginning. Tonight, we walk you through how an EMP attack could unfold and what comes next. Welcome to Survival Dispatch News for Monday, April 27th, 2026. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch. Joined tonight by combat wounded Green Beret Randy Nance, 26-year CIA case officer Jeff MD, and Delta Team warrior Mike Glover. Bottom line up front, a high-altitude nuclear detonation triggering a continental EMP could collapse the U.S. power grid in seconds, kill every vehicle, drop aircraft from the sky, and silence every radio across the continent in a deliberate first strike designed to cripple infrastructure without immediate visible destruction. This is the asymmetric weapon our enemies have studied for decades, and most Americans have no idea it's coming. The moment it hits, modern life ends and survival becomes the only mission. So what we're covering tonight is HEMP physics, so a high-altitude EMP physics, and grid vulnerability, the early warning indicators that tell you it's already happened, and the longer horizon collapse that follows once the silence sets in. So moving directly into segment number one, HEMP physics, E1, E2, E3, and why the grid falls. A high-altitude nuclear detonation, roughly 30,000 kilometers or more, 30 kilometers or more above the Earth, releases gamma radiation that interacts with upper atmosphere and produces three distinct waveforms in sequence, the E1, E2, and E3 pulses, each one engineered to break a different layer of our infrastructure. The E1 pulse hits in nanoseconds and fries solid-state electronic, protective relays, SCADA controls, and vehicle computers. The E2 follows almost instantly like a continental-scale lightning strike, and the E3 pulse induces enormous quasi-direct currents that flow through long transmission lines and physically destroy large power transformers the same way a severe geomagnetic storm would. America runs on roughly 2,000 large high-voltage transformers, and most of them are built overseas with 12 to 24-month lead time, which means once the E3 takes them down, the grid does not come back on a timeline that modern civilization can survive. So I think we lost Mike, but he's back. Good to see you all. Jeff, coming straight to you per usual. Walk us through what actually happens in the atmosphere when a nuclear weapon detonates, say, 200 miles up, and why the result is electromagnetic instead of thermal, Jeff.
Well, there is thermal at the point of detonation, but it's so high up, you don't feel it. If you've ever seen a video or old films of an airburst nuclear weapon, if you get high, you get a big fireball, but it never reaches the ground. But it's still releasing tons of energy. I mean, megatons. It's like megatons of explosive, hence the name megatons. It's a broad spectrum blast of energy. It's, different gamma rays and things like that. And the gamma rays cook you short term, but it's putting out a lot of other stuff. It's going all the way across the spectrum. And so it's a violent burst of energy at a variety of frequencies. And some of these frequencies have different effects than the others. And one of the effects is they can actually stimulate what we call eddy currents. It's when the molecules themselves vibrate and then generate electricity. But if they make eddy currents in silicon, you will actually create electricity in the silicon, like in a chip, that fries the circuits of the chip. It's more electricity than the chip is designed to handle, and it cooks them. That happens on microwave frequencies. And the Russians accidentally shot down a Swedish Gripen fighter back in the 90s when they were testing. The fighter was flying near the Russian border, and the Russians were using a high-powered microwave radar system, and it actually cooked the electronics on the Gripen and caused it to crash. And so then you'll get some different frequencies. We talked about the Coriolis effect. Or not the Coriolis effect, the coronal mass ejection, which caused sparks and fires along telegraph lines back in the 1800s. That can happen today just as well. If you get the right frequency that hits the wires, travels along the wires act like an antenna for the energy, and then it comes to a point where it's got to go to ground, and it can cause fires. So it's a nasty effect.
So first and foremost, those of you who are glad that we have engineer Jeff as part of the SDM team, put a 1 in the live chat because it's a few pay grades above me. Number 2, a completely unplanned guest has shown up, Agent 00711.
Oh my God! He's come back from the brink of
the dead. From the dead.
So the rumors of your demise are not justified, apparently.
He was in Vegas and ran out of chips.
They were close this time. But no, we're okay this time now.
Right on. Good to hear your voice. So I didn't send you the brief, Cleet. I didn't know that we were going to see you, but we're discussing EMPs. But once we're done with the EMPs, Mike's going to walk us through the assassination attempt on Trump and other officials on the weekend. Maybe you can join in for that, and then a sit rep afterwards. I'll let everybody else go, and you and I can do the sit rep. So anyway, with that being said, Randy, quick question for you. Do you have surge protectors in your house?
Yes, I do. I have everything hooked into surge protectors.
Okay. Would it surprise you to know that the E1 pulse that Jeff described originally happens in under 100 nanoseconds, basically 1,000 times faster than the lightning strike?
Well, I was not aware of that before this, but yes, now I've become aware of it. I'm like, holy smoke. So it's, it's why those things don't work, right? If an EMP happens, all your surge protectors aren't going to react quick enough to prevent damage or from complete shutdown, as we know, because when EMP happens, all your electronics are smoked, every bit of them, all of them. So,
just out of curiosity, have you ever owned a home that's been struck by lightning or anything?
No, not that I know of.
I got hit by one at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm standing in the kitchen island having a coffee, maybe 10 feet away from me. I had windows open on either end of the house. It was like 60 some odd feet open across the front, big open house, open concept house. That night, lightning came in, one window went out the other. I jumped about 10 feet off the freaking ground, and it hit it grounded itself through the phone system back in the old landlines and fried every single phone line in my house. So,
well, it is pretty crowded. I've been there. I think I was probably 8, 9, 10, maybe even 11 or 12 years old, somewhere in that time frame. I was playing golf in Orange, Texas, when a thunderstorm came in. Even though I know everybody told you if there's a thunderstorm, you're playing golf, you got to go on. But I was a kid, I'm like, I'm gonna tough it out. And literally, lightning struck a tree that was probably less than 50 yards from me. It was a big, tall pine tree. And when it hit the top of that tree and zoop all the way down, watch all the stuff fly off of it. I was just like, whoop, and I'm sitting there holding my little golf club like, well, maybe it is time to go in. Of course, I think we left our clubs even and ran back into the clubhouse until it passed over. But that was something I've never forgot, watching that thing hit that tree less than 50 yards. And I tell you what, it was an impressive sight.
I went to high school with a guy. His name was Dave. I'm trying to remember what his last name was. Believe it or not, 2 separate instances hit by lightning on a golf course. And the second one really messed him up. Jeff, go ahead before I go.
No, Lee Trevino said, if there's a storm, he says, what do you do? He says, I hold up a 1-iron. And I'm like, that's too stupid. He goes, no, because not even God can hit a 1-iron.
That's pretty funny.
I don't know that I would tempt him, but hey,
I don't want to test the theory myself.
No kidding. So I got an off-script question for you, and I'm just curious. You may not be even to comment on it for that matter, but the E3, the last part that Jeff described earlier, that's the one that knocks out grid components, and especially those LPTs, large power transformers. And it looks like we've gone from about 60 to 72 months down to about 24 months lead time. And every single one of them is custom made. We've got about 2,000 of them. Was there ever any provisions in special forces to contend with something like this, whether it's being inflicted on us or us inflicting it on somebody else, or can't comment on any of the above?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we had Air Force special operations weathermen attached to us that I'd never seen before, that managed weather decisions, mostly because everything we were doing involved ISR aircraft or even military freefall operations. But he was tuned into weather and its effects and impacts, and even lightning. I mean, he's given briefs on lightning and how it affects us and the terrain and night vision and all the stuff. And his job was really low. I mean, it was high speed as far as like the academic component of his job.
Just pause there for a second, Mike. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably have more experience wearing night vision than anybody else I know. What's the effect of lightning when you're wearing night vision?
Well, typically, I mean, you don't see this with a naked eye, but whenever you go over a disturbance that's generating thunder and lightning, it's typically a ball of lightning that's like static electricity that's firing off in the sky. And what that does for night vision is it enhances it, because obviously you need passive light. Like I always tell people, if you go into a bathroom and you put a towel underneath the door and you have NVGs on, you're not going to see anything. It's going to be completely dark. But there's a period of light, or a level of passive light, that the advantage goes obviously to the bad guys as well, because these guys are used to operating without NVGs. And if there's any loom for them, it's like daylight, where we'll be restricted, because it's hard to obviously go from NVGs where you're light sensitive in the eye, and then flipping them up and then trying to get the visual of what's happening in real light in real time. So it enhances our vision, enhances the bad guys' capability. But typically, if there's lightning, there's not ISR platforms. And I know a lot of military units, including very elite ones, that don't operate if they don't have ISR. Well, if you're a Green Beret in remote Afghanistan, you operate without ISR. I mean, I think Randy could probably attest to that. They don't care about you in the hinterlands operating without close air support. So you're out there flapping. So I have seen it, but it's just not common.
For our audience who's not familiar with ISR, just expand on that, please.
It stands for imagery, surveillance, and reconnaissance. It's typically associated with a fixed wing platform that's orbiting overhead, that's watching the Earth and getting situational awareness with technology, with pods, using signal equipment, using all kinds of different equipment to get situational awareness of what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, appreciate it. One last question that's kind of related to the last question. But Jeff alluded to what was the Carrington event. So that was September 1st, 1859. We got hit with a coronal mass ejection. There was no equipment to measure it, so it's guesstimated that it was at an X5 level. So a coronal mass ejection plasma that's coming from the sun, it's like a massive EMP, but once it hits the ionosphere, it travels around the entire circumference of the planet. It hits everywhere equally. There's no safe places to be. And when that hit in 1859, it burned telegraph operators themselves, like physically burned up the operators, the telegraph machines, the lines, the whole 9 yards. They say today if we had an X5, it would essentially reduce the population of the Earth to very minimal in no time at all, because everything electronic would be gone. Did anything like that happen to ever come up, like any space-related weather or just tertiary weather in all the years that you had in the military?
There are look, I've had nothing natural besides I told you guys with the podcast with Khalid. I've been in 2 major earthquakes, one in Afghanistan in 2005 that derived its origin was in Pakistan and just destroyed northeastern Afghanistan, Pakistan, thousands of people dead. We had to go pick up dead interpreters that died in the villages across the street from our fire base. And then one in Pakistan when I was in Islamabad in 2015-16 timeframe, equally as devastating and a big crap shoot, like just leveled villages on the border, especially in Pakistan. I know there are capabilities of EMP type technology that we've used for denial of service and other things. It was probably used in the raid to capture Maduro. A lot of that's classified, I can't talk about, but I know it exists. I've utilized it and actually requested it for a mission before and got it approved. Outside of that, natural wise, I've hit targets in every type of weather, but you're completely impeded if you have close air support with a pod and the weather is bad. It's even relative humidity being high because there's a impending storm is going to cause pod issues that don't work well in humidity. So I've seen weather affect a lot of operations, and that's why a lot of our operations are done in good weather, not necessarily bad weather.
Makes sense. I appreciate the firsthand experience there. So Khalid, we wrapped up the Long War series on Thursday last week. Friday, we did an introduction to what we're covering now. We're into the America Under Siege series, which is 12 arcs and 96 episodes. Tonight's the very first one. We have one arc, think of it as a season, that's dedicated to terrorism, but the other 11 are other calamities like EMPs and stuff. But since you're here and you are our resident expert on Middle East terrorism, number one, would it surprise you to know, and for those of you who aren't aware of this, Khalid grew up here in America and went to Pakistan about 20 years ago, started his organization, and will be returning at some point to the homeland here. But number one, would it surprise you to know that virtually none of our infrastructure, the grid, is protected against EMPs? And number two, can you shed any light as far as terrorist aspirations to do something on the scale of a EMP or even something else that might take out a significant portion of our grid?
Well, Chris, first thing, yeah, I know that the grids aren't protected from EMPs at all. We've talked about this a number of times, that the U.S. grid is not protected at all. In terms of what the terrorists are planning, I've actually seen the plans now myself. They're not planning EMPs. They are planning kinetic strikes. Cyber attack followed by a kinetic strike across the U.S. and Europe.
Okay.
On every single electric, water, gas, oil, every facility they can hit. What we've seen over the past couple of weeks, some of the intelligence that we've gathered over the past couple of weeks and some of the raids that we've done, we've gotten a lot of intelligence in terms of what their plans are going forward. Some of them have been, some of the raids we've done have been in friendly countries. Some of them have been in hostile countries. But what we've learned is that The structure that's being put together right now is a 3-tier structure. First hit is a cyber attack on everything the U.S. counts on, from banks to supply chains to electronics to your electrical grid. Your second strike is a kinetic strike, where they will hit your supply grid, they will hit your electrics, your gas, your water systems, and then they'll go after the soft targets that are left. Because once everything's been taken out, the belief they've got is that they will create so much mass panic in the United States that they can take advantage of that and carry out a mass casualty event in almost every city in the United States. So yeah, the terrorists have done some pretty heavy planning in on the electrical grid.
All right, thanks, Khalid. So for everybody out there who thinks that Khalid is just a ray of sunshine, put a 1 in the live chat. He always brings the good news, right? So coming back to you, Jeff, the 2017 EMP Commission report and decades of testing, Oak Ridge testing is where they did it, came to the same conclusion that our grid is in, a precarious state. Why has nobody done anything about this? Because we can go back even further. About 30 years ago, almost somebody from every party every year has introduced a bill to protect our grid for 30 years, every year, and they're not doing it. Why is that?
Well, one, maintenance is not sexy. You can't, you don't get promoted by saying, during my watch, nothing happened. Even though that's a good thing that nothing happened during your watch. That's one. And I think, so it doesn't get people promoted because there's no there. I mean, you have to have had an attack, survived it well, and then say, see what I did. It's also, it's expensive, not that expensive, not in relative terms, but everybody is looking for return on investment. It's like the return on maintenance. It doesn't show up in the bottom line, but if you spend that money on new generation that you can in turn sell to some data center somewhere, you can say, I brought X number of dollars to the bottom line for the company. It's like training. It's just not sexy, and people don't do it, especially government.
Yeah, that's really discouraging that we're this vulnerable. So, Randy, North Korea, Russia, China, Iran, they have all openly discussed using what they refer to as super EMP weapons. And I don't know, you can touch on what you can touch on while you were in the military, but I just want to get your high level thoughts. Do we have any way to defend against this? Like if these guys were to do this, especially coordinated, or are we just sitting ducks?
Well, first thing I'll say is I wasn't read on to any kind of EMPs. I wasn't in the nuclear program or anything like that. So all our focus was on Iraq and Afghanistan at the time, basically on the ground. I mean, you look at it, teams have different designations. In fact, the team I was on was technically a mountain team, right? We had 12 tack boxes full of mountain gear. I knew what some of it was, but we couldn't even go to mountain school if we wanted to because the commands weren't paying for that at the time. And really, all teams became vehicle teams because that's what everybody did there. But just talking about that, of course, the terrorists aren't talking about EMPs and nuclear warheads. Well, yeah, sure, they could probably get a dirty bomb. They might be able to even try to run down some kind of nuclear capability, but why would they do that? Their forte is going to be down in the dirt, the dirty, and without technology. That's why go after the power grid. Why? Because it'll do the same thing. You don't need to EMP to do that. You take our power grid out, you don't need an EMP. But then we'll go back to the state actors like China and Russia. I guarantee you they have some type of weapon systems that do that. And again, I'm not read onto any programs. And of course, if I was, we wouldn't be able to talk about it because I guarantee it's classified. But the reality is, what I can tell you is between DARPA and DOD or DOW, whatever you want to call it now, I guarantee you we do. Now, every household? No. Is it common to every person and your average citizen? Absolutely not. But I guarantee you our government, our military, and certainly our intelligence agencies have weapon systems and things that can defeat it. As you know, we all can buy EMP stuff now and put a device on your car or your home, but that's not what we're talking about. And again, I don't know, but I'm just going to go off of what I do know and how we operate and how far out there some of our stuff is that we don't even know about. Guaranteed we do have, well, we also have the same capability, but I guarantee you we also have the defense of it as well.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. As you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, I'm looking at all these different screens here, and I did a rough addition in my head. There's about 3,000 people watching us on 10 different platforms right now, and I was thinking that you would have to kill all of us, like all 3,000 of your closest friends, if you told us any classified information.
Yeah. Well, then that probably wouldn't even be work since we're online and this is live. So
Fair enough. Mike, coming back to you, because this is a topic for, somebody who's written a bestseller like Prepared. If an HEMP, so a high altitude EMP, hit the United States tomorrow, how long does the American family have before all of the cascading collapses happen? Water, food, fuel, medicine, all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting that if you look at EMP history, which I've done entire episodes and many documentaries on, in the 1960s, we did, I think it was a 400 or such kilometer explosion in 1962 that was categorized E1 through 3 and affected power and electronic devices out to 900 miles, which is obviously very broad, very wide. Electronic devices were shut down, and this is in the 60s where we weren't immersed with technology. Where we're immersed now and everything is dependent on a cell phone, including watching your kids, talking with their teachers, integrating with the security features on your home. It might even be the way that you turn up or turn down or control the HVAC in your actual house. It might even be the way that you monitor your generator that's plugged in. That technology, with the oversaturation of technology in vehicles, would cause devastating effects. Instantaneous would be the answer. And the reason that is, I mean, this has just been released. I just watched a mini documentary on this yesterday on Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company just filed for patents to be able to utilize software and cameras in vehicles to prevent you from driving your own truck if you look inebriated, and define the subjectiveness of being inebriated. I mean, police fail at this every single day. There's cities and towns in America where officers in the highway patrol have arrested, 30 individuals that were all sober. So how subjective would that be when a camera's trying to do that for you? Well, imagine an EMP comes through and destroys all the electronic capability of your vehicle, where now you can't even drive it. I mean, the reason I sold my F350, which is a 2024, and bought a 1980 bullnose F350, which could pull nearly the same amount of weight, is because I don't have to put DEF fluid in it. Because if it doesn't have bovine piss in it, it just shuts down on the side of the road until you can get some $30 bovine piss back in it. And that's literally what DEF is. So if you look at already the integration of all the things in our lives, you see an EMP come in, it's going to wipe out all that tech. You're not going to be able to drive your car, get on your cell phone, order your food, and it's going to cause massive amounts of exploitation, especially from really bad people who would do it anyway. I mean, and in fact, you're talking about some of it in your series Remnant I saw. Those are going to be the primary actors that I would be scared of.
Let me ask you this. So I saw the patents that Ford's filed for. And the first thing that occurred to me, Mike, is what happens when that system refuses to allow a driver to turn it on when there's an emergency situation in a remote area, like a hunter is hurt or a hiker is hurt. What happens there, and who's responsible at that point? Yeah, Randy?
Well, before he answers, they're going to get sued, because it's not just if you're drunk. This technology is looking at eyes. It's movement, eye size. So even if you have wide eyes and you look excited, it's not going to let you start the truck.
Yeah, exactly. So sorry, Mike, go ahead.
In that same filing patent, as Randy just lined out, they actually have a component of that patent that identifies biometrics, eye retina scan, and can determine whether or not you have a criminal history or record. Now, their advertisement was, it's real good for cops. They actually said that in the patent filing. It's good for cops.
Wow.
But it's also something that reduces liability for insurance companies, is their claim. Now, the premise of this mini documentary was exactly that. This guy comes out of the woods and he does a theatrical kind of event where, he just had this traumatic event happen on his ranch. He goes to get in his truck. His eyes are wide. He doesn't look the part because he's in shock. And it determined the baseline being obviously in a normal circumstance or situation, not an extreme circumstance, and he can't start the truck. He can't get in the vehicle, can't start the truck, and then identifies him basically as somebody who's not supposed to be there, and it locks it down, and then it's a brick. That's really scary. That's what an EMP would do. And we're working against ourselves almost like it's part of the design to come up with all these different solutions to violate our liberties, rights, and freedoms. And then ultimately, in case of an EMP, it's going to destroy our safety and our security, which is real scary. Which is why, I just did a video on it on YouTube. It hasn't come out yet. Why I think the analog 1980s is making a comeback. People are buying old trucks. They're buying old electronic devices. They're buying battery-powered things that aren't integrated via Bluetooth just to vacuum your floor. It's insane. I couldn't even figure out how to use this iRobot kind of vacuum cleaner because it was mapping out the floor plan of my house, and it said basically it needed to finish mapping my house and connect it to the internet, to Wi-Fi, to confirm the mapping to continue use. I threw that shit in the trash because I'm like, oh, so you're uploading a blueprint for my DJI drone and now my vacuum cleaner inside my house to China? Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, for sure. You got me beat by 2 years. Yours is 1980. Mine's 1982. I know you've seen it before, but that's my 82.
I love that square body. Well, I have a problem. I have a 71, a 72, a 76, an 80, and an 84. So that's the problem I have. My house looks like a junkyard.
And when I get my next vehicle, which will be this year, it is going to be a much older vehicle. I won't buy a new
square body.
Yep.
Yep.
But they're also saying they're purposely running out of those parts. So eventually they're going to run us off, or if you don't, if it's not running, you're not going to be able to fix it.
Yeah, true story. That my truck originally came with a 350 with a turbo 350 transmission in it, which has some electronic components. I'm sure, Mike, you know that. I replaced it with a 700 R4 transmission, no electronics whatsoever, but I can't keep a tranny in that thing. It's got a 383 punch 60 over, so it's basically a 400 stroker. And it produced 658 horse at the crank on the bench, and it's about 500 horsepower at the rear wheels, which are 40-inch rubber. I can't keep a transmission in it to save my life, but there's no electronics, so EMP can't take me out. So it's all
2
good.
miles per gallon.
Yeah, actually, I get gallons per mile, not miles per gallon, but that's another story. So we're going to jump into segment number 2, but before we do that, Khalid, I want to mention that. What's it been? It's been a few weeks since we've seen you. One of the platforms we've been broadcasting to is called Twitch. And the second you started talking, we got kicked off of Twitch because we violated their terms of service. Wow. So your record is intact. You hold the best record next to me, probably, for getting us kicked off of different platforms. Good job, Cleet. Good to see you back. All right, let's get into segment 2. Reading the signs, vehicle failure to aircraft distress. The first 60 seconds after an HEMP event will tell you what you're dealing with. Simultaneous vehicle stalls across multiple lanes with no recovery or restart, total cellular and internet blackout, street lights and traffic signals dropping at the exact same instant are the signature pattern that separates an HEMP strike from a normal grid failure. Aircraft distress chatter on aviation bands followed by sudden silence is the hardest physical signal to ignore. Planes don't fall out of the sky during routine outages, and battery-powered radios picking up nothing on AM, FM, or shortwave bands confirms what the dead phone in your hand will already be telling you. Most Americans will burn 3 to 6 hours convincing themselves the lights are coming back, whereas the prepared American uses those first 30 seconds to confirm the pattern, secure water, protect remaining electronics in a Faraday container, and shift to long duration mindset before the rest of the country figures out what happened. So, Khalid, even though I normally go to Jeff first, I'm going to come to you because you were next in the rotation. What do you reckon the single fastest way is for the average person to draw the conclusion that an HEMP strike has happened versus some sort of regional power outage, a regular grid down situation in the first 60 seconds?
Well, the first thing, because we've seen it here in Pakistan, when you have a grid down situation, your mobile networks don't collapse. They continue, they become very slow, they become very clogged, but they continue to run. When you have a complete and massive collapse of the system, everything shuts down. And Mike was talking about the earthquake in 2005 in Pakistan. I was part of that earthquake. We went and did relief work during the earthquake. Those areas, you could not get a mobile to work for anything. I mean, there was no such thing as a signal in those areas. We were in villages for 2-3 months, digging people out of the rubble, and you knew that nothing was going to work. You had to find a landline phone someplace and call people from that. The problem we've got with the US and with most of the developed world is we've gotten so dependent on our electronics that it's going to take us a long time to convince ourselves that, yeah, the system is gone. We need to find a way around this. And everyone's going to, for the first hour and a half, everyone's going to think, yeah, the power is going to come back. The power is going to come back. And that hour and a half is going to be very costly for you. Because that hour and a half is when, and we call it burst to blast. From the time the power goes out to the time you get hit is a 15 to 20 minute span when your enemy is taking complete control of an area. When you're talking about an hour and a half before you wake up to the fact that power is gone and your communication networks are gone, you've already lost your community. Your city's gone. It's already been taken over by the adversary. So whatever you do after that, you're fighting a losing battle. And this is the one thing we've been trying to tell people in the Western world is that start thinking of this from a third world country's point of view. We know how this works. We know how it happens because we've seen it happen. Listen to what we're telling you, because once that power grid goes down, you have 15 minutes to 30 minutes tops before you have lost complete control of the area.
Yeah, so I will endorse the ray of sunshine moniker for you, Khalid. Thank you very much. Jeff, I want to get you to comment on where we wrapped up at the end of the first segment. I want to know, why are mechanical vehicles, built before, let's say, mid 80s, more likely to start after an EMP? And is it a realistic working preparedness plan for people like Mike and I and the rest of us to have these old vehicles?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the electronic ignition part of it, the coil and the you have points in a coil and a spark plug are very simple, and they're electronic, but they're mostly mechanical. And even if for some reason, say the alternator gets fried, you've replaced the generator with an alternator and the alternator gets fried, you can push start the damn thing. But if you have anything with any kind of electronic ignition system, electronic control module, anything like that, it's got computer chips in it. They may be crude, they may be old style, but they can still be subject to shorting out due to eddy currents. Probably the best thing to have would be a Willys frickin' Jeep. 4-cylinder engine, very simple. All you got to do to make sure it runs, park on a hill. And old mechanical diesels are wonderful. If you've got like a 1984 diesel Volkswagen Rabbit, those things will run forever without an alternator, because my brother and I drove from Arizona to Arkansas in one, and the alternator mount broke. And as long as we drove it during the daytime where we didn't have to use the lights, you'd never know. because it just motored along. It didn't need the battery for anything. It didn't need, because it's all mechanical.
Yeah, right on. Randy, when the cell network is gone and, in the period immediately after an EMP, what's the communication landscape look like, let's say, for the first 24 hours and then beyond the first 24 hours, as far as, what comms are left at that point in time?
Well, I'm just going to go off of what Father Duck told us, and others have said that we're down, either in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, or down there in New York City during September 11th. And instantly, most communication devices did not work. I can't remember. He did say one flip phone. So I would imagine it's going to be something similar, that cellular stuff will go down. There might be some oddity that's still up, I would assume so, since it was in New York City. But, it's going to be, the first 24 hours are going to be bad, because I think if the cell service doesn't go down just from what's happened, everybody getting on the phone at once will override the whole system, and then it's not going to work anyway. So I would say that, hopefully you've got, some kind of radios out there that work. But again, if nothing else, if you've got one of those hand crank radios, at least, you can crank that up and see if you can get any information. You're not going to use it to communicate with anybody, but you may be able to hear what's going on and any information that's being put out. Certainly any kind of directions, which again, coming from the government, you might take those directions with a grain of salt or common sense. So yeah, I think it's going to be a real shit show. That's what I think.
Yeah. And I think with a hand crank radio, that would be working under the assumption that the government infrastructure would still be functioning after an EMP
or something. Yeah. Anything. That's right.
I suspect, like, if it was a completely post-apocalyptic situation like our new Remnant series, probably shortwave high frequency is going to be the end of it. Mike, I
don't know. We haven't got to that episode yet.
Well, I'm just spoiler alert. Just so you know, spoiler alert. Wait until you see when the Smith family runs into Mike Glover, what happens.
All right.
Yeah, it's going to be off the chain. So
tell me he's got some Wasatch and he's got some.
No. The family's under so much stress that they're developing wrinkles. And as you heard Mike just say, he's going to introduce the Mike Glover Bro Talks. And yes, they're going to be slightly jaundiced looking. I know. Look at me here, all jaundiced, but it works. It's the real deal. It's good.
Well, him and Khalid shaved, obviously. So,
well, if it works, it works, right? At the end of the day. So, Mike, first and foremost, I want you to answer this question from an audience member who, by the way, thank you for the tip. So, what makes an EMP attack more advantageous over a traditional nuclear attack? Then I've got another question for you after that.
Yeah, I think what makes it more advantageous is the area of coverage and then the potential fallout. I mean, electromagnetic pulse attack is just going to be more chaos, more second and third order effects, and it's going to be that self-licking ice cream cone that the enemy wants to have. When you drop a bomb in a very specific area of the country and a lot of people die, it's the end of it. But when you disable their capability to function as a society, you destroy their sense of security. They're psychologically impacted and affected, and then they'll just eat their own. I mean, the zombie apocalypse is an analogy used with an EMP because that's what typically is going to happen. You're going to have a whole bunch of bad guys come out of the woodwork, taking advantage of good people, and that's going to cause chaos. So it's similar to like a sniper tactic. Like, why would you use a sniper on a battlefield where it's one shot, one kill? It's the fear that you create on the battlefield that changes the psychology, that's more impactful than just conducting a raid or an ambush or dropping a bomb.
Yeah, well said. So, Mike, walk us through what Faraday bags and Faraday containers are and what your recommendations are for the average American household.
Yeah, I would say at a minimum, like one, look at the potential of putting everything that you own that's in electronics in Faraday bags that are used for everyday carry. They make Faraday bags that are purses, man satchels, little, SLNT makes these versions that are just like basically bifolds that you just open up and you put it in and you fold it over. And that's going to protect your device, but also give you convenience of carrying it around. That's a minimum, especially for protecting your phone from interrogation or protecting the RFID or chips on your credit cards from interrogation from other exploitable devices, Bluetooth, other tech that could be taking advantage of it. There's a lot of expertise in this. You're Chris, you're obviously one of them that did a pretty profound EMP test on specific types of equipment. Look, my understanding of EMP, especially as it relates to this type of attack launched in the air at distance, spreading over a large swath of the United States, is that if electricity is not flowing through it, like Jeff talked about with the vehicles having a 12-volt system and everything's passive, it's likely not going to be impacted by an EMP attack. If it's hooked to electricity, if it has pass-through electricity, and it has circuitry or a smart board, a circuit board, then that's going to be affected. And so I would look at dumbing down some of the things that you lean in on. Yeah, it's high speed to have a lithium Tesla battery setup that's powering your house in extreme circumstances. But you might also want to have a dumb generator that's not disconnected from everything that requires gasoline, right? So I would just build contingencies in your PACE plan in order to have options versus everything that's immersed in technology seems to be the only option.
Yeah, great answer, Mike. And before I come to you, Khalid, I've been waiting for a troll to show up and say, don't trust the EMP shield. Well, we are the only people out there who have physically tested these devices and published the results. I'm going to get everybody on stage here. So if you go to our .com website, survivaldispatch.com, you'll see that there's a featured video at the top, EMP protection, 400,000 volt test. Here's the deal. We built a 400,000 volt Marks generator that actually produced closer to 600,000 volts. Then we built an 800,000 volt Marks generator and almost killed ourselves in the process, literally. 25 feet away with a fiberglass rod hitting the transformer, which sent the electricity out to the capacitors, and it tried to ground back 25 feet further away, and we stopped the experiment at that point in time. This was a $20,000 exercise on our part. Thankfully, we had a wealthy follower who sponsored the bulk of the expenses on that one. Like Hampton 11 says, don't trust the EMP shield. Yeah, okay, what are you basing that on? Have you ever tested this stuff? No, because nobody has tested this and published it but us, period, full stop. Nobody's done it. And we knew that we would have pundits like you coming out of the woodwork with your comments, completely unfounded, based on nothing, no tests, no science. If you've done the test, by all means, drop the link. Let me see it. So
now wait a minute, Chris. They probably saw it on the internet.
Yeah, well, that's true, right? Here's the deal. When we built this and when we did this experiment, we specifically did not want to show an electronic device measuring voltage that said, see, check it out, there's 400, 500, 600,000 volts, because we knew somebody would say it was bullshit. So what we did instead was an air gap, and there's a very specific formula, but essentially every centimeter that electricity travels between 2 points across the air is about 30,000 volts. And we jumped 20 centimeters times 30,000, 600,000 volts. We put 400,000 volts on the thumbnail just so some asshole didn't come along and say, well, if there's particles in the air or the atmospheric pressure is different, that could actually be 551.789 volts or some bullshit like that, because there's always an asshole around every corner, right? Keyboard commandos. So I'm going to show you this, but again, if you go to survivaldispatch.com, the video is there. If you go to survivaldispatch.news, it's in today's sit rep, which is what I'm showing right here. And at the 11 minute and 55 second point, you'll see it jump. Here we go. So I'm going to pause it there. As you can see, this is 8.25 inches, almost 21 centimeters, 30,000 volts per centimeter, over 600,000.
Supposed to be 30,000 volts per centimeter. We've got 8.25 inches here.
So we repeatedly did this, as you can see. So what we have here at the bottom of the screen, there's a transformer generating 20,000 volts. And we did measure that with a meter to show people that, but really the air gap test is the big one. Each of these guys along this black strip are capacitors. So what happens is when you load them up with electricity from the transformer, the capacitors all let go at the same time. And when they let go at the same time, it's a perfect simulation of what an EMP or a CME looks and behaves like. So again, if you've got the proof to prove us wrong that EMP shield doesn't work, by all means, let's see your video and let's see your proof. Otherwise, STFU basically. So here's the deal on that test bed. Go watch the video. We hooked up a bunch of sensitive electronics down at the far, or right in the middle, and at the far left end, we put an EMP shield on a dedicated ground rod. We hit that test bed over 100 times, and we hit it 6 inches away from all of the sensitive electronics, and no damage was done. We disconnected the EMP shield, and it instantly smoked everything on the test bed. But you see the sheetrock behind that? This is in Steve's garage. It went through the sheetrock, coupled onto the house wiring, went to the other end of his house, went up a story, and destroyed every single appliance in his kitchen. And none of that happened when the EMP shield was attached. So again, if you've got the receipts, let's see them. Otherwise, like I said, STFU, go to survivaldispatch.com. You can watch the video there, or go to survivaldispatch.news and you can check out the today's sit rep, which has that video embedded in it as well. So Cleeg, coming to you, how fast does municipal water pressure drop when all the electric pumps lose power? Because I'm assuming this is something that you've seen. And then play that out in a national situation across America because of an EMP.
Well, it doesn't take more than an hour for water pressure to collapse. I mean, if you're very close to the water station, it'll take longer. If you're very close to the pumping station, it'll take longer. But if the farther away you get, the quicker you lose water. And the thing people don't understand is that the entire Western world is so dependent on electronics now that when electricity goes, I mean, I remember when we were living in Dubai, if the electricity went off for 5 minutes, the president of the country was notified that the electricity has been out for 5 minutes, and an entire force was put into action to bring electricity back in the UAE. That does not exist anywhere else in the world. When you can lose power for hours and hours and hours on end, and no one knows and no one cares and no one knows what's happening, it creates mass panic. We saw it here in Pakistan. When I was living in Karachi, we had the power go out at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by noon, the telephone systems to the electric company were completely jammed with people calling, trying to find out why electricity was gone. We found out that one of the grid stations had burned down. This took us over 12 hours to find out that a grid station had burned down. Power did not come back for 3 days. Think about that. For 3 days, we had no electricity. No one knew what to do. Generators ran out. Uninterrupted power supplies ran out. Batteries went dead. People were in absolute panic because whatever they had in their fridge had spoiled. The Western world still has not seen this kind of a collapse. And when this kind of a collapse happens, the panic, the mass panic you're going to see in the United States, in Europe, in developed countries, it's going to lead to riots. It's going to lead to all kinds of problems that your government is not ready for, your civil administration is not ready for, and the people themselves are not ready for.
Yeah, but could not agree more with that. And you set Jeff up perfectly for the next question. But before I go there, I just want to address a couple questions coming in. Number one, there's a link down below in the video description on every platform for EMP Shield. We get a small stipend from that. You save $50 per device. We get a small commission on that. That's how we keep Survival Dispatch News running. Again, we spent $20,000 on that video. Somebody was asking how the EMP Shield works. So there's a component inside the EMP Shield called a metal oxide varistor, and it has infinite resistance until it senses electricity. Then it has infinite attraction. So what that essentially means is that as soon as a lightning strike, a CME, an EMP hits anything that you have protected, okay? So you could have the device could be put on your panel for your home. The device can be put on your car or your truck. The devices can also come with just an extension cord and a plug on the end where you plug it into your home, and then you have 6 gangs where you can plug in 6 more things. They are all protected. It's kind of like a portable type of unit. When the EMP hits, it immediately goes off to wherever the EMP shield is and out to the ground. You got to have a full ground on the home one to make it work really, really well. And that's how it does it. Metal oxide varistor, go ahead and look it up. So Jeff, Khalid set you up pretty good here. What are the most common psychological mistakes people make in the first 6 hours of a grid down event? And how do those mistakes get them killed before week 1 is even over?
Well, in the case of a grid down, when it goes down, they don't think it's down, or they think it's temporary. And we all do this because we've all seen, power outages. You're like, crap, how long is this thing going to be out? And it's out for 15 minutes. It might be out for 2 or 3 hours. And then you're trying to figure out what happened, and you're looking online. Oh, anybody post anything? They don't take it seriously, and they don't prepare, because one of the first things you have to do is fill your damn bathtubs full of water. Get that water bob out, fill those bathtubs up, get water while the system still has water and while it's still potable, because you want to have, you need water. You need water before you need anything else. Now, if you're prepared and you have 2 different types, like Mike talked about, having maybe a solar battery, lithium, one, which will not survive an EMP, but you have a backup mechanical, gas powered generator, then you're okay. You'll figure so. I've got both. And my gas one I converted to run on either gasoline or propane. But you need to act, because those 6 hours are vital. If you don't feel like you don't secure your water source in those 6 hours, there's not going to be water to secure. You also need to make sure that your home is secure, because the last thing you need is at the 6 hour mark is figuring out that someone's going to try and break into your house and steal what you have. But it's the wait and see. Oh, they'll fix it. They may. And if you fill your bathtubs and your water bob and they fix it, okay, you may feel a little dumb, but you'll drain the water. No harm done. Okay, you've wasted, 100 gallons of water, big deal. But it's failing to act.
Not if you're my wife. So when we have hurricanes come our way and she fills the water bobs and then the hurricane hits us and then goes away, she doesn't drain the water because she doesn't want to waste it. She uses it for various things.
Oh, to water the plants. Here in Arizona too. I mean, I used to if I'm running water to get it hot in the kitchen, I used to save that and water plants with it.
Too funny. So Randy, you get final kick at the can, segment number 2, and then I'm going to open up segment number 3 with Mike. If you had to give a Christian preparedness household one early warning indicator to memorize, what would it be, and why would you choose that one indicator, Randy?
Oh, let's see here. I think I'm going to go with, what really the biggest thing would be, and it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not, but certainly I'd lean to that anyway. I would say recognizing what's happening, right? Because as we just talked about, and then Jeff just eloquently put how crunched that timeline will be after something like this goes off. So, or something like this happens, because of course, if you're right at ground zero and you see what happened, then, you won't have to really probably make those decisions, but there'll be plenty of people that aren't right there on the X that'll be affected by these things. And you have to recognize it quick, because as we've just mentioned this whole show, you're not going to have a lot of time. And I'll take that to a point when Khalid was talking about that, how people are going to come out, and we've talked about Baghdad many times, right? And I've talked about, those 3 days of looting. Well, there will be a big difference. That is human nature. So as soon as everybody, and it won't matter how large the demographic of area is, if they don't have the rule of law, this happens very quickly. But see, when we set Iraq free for those 3 days, like I said, we sat there at checkpoints still pulling guard, doing all the stuff that military folks do when we're holding ground. But all those people were still happy. They were waving at us and going on. Now, as I mentioned, some of them had fights, right, over different types of stuff or whatever they were trying to take. But everybody was still happy. When this type of thing happens in this country, and if it's certainly what we think that it could get to, you're going to see just like that in Baghdad, except everybody's not going to be happy. Everybody's going to be angry. People are going to be freaking out, and then all in between. And then people will come out by the droves, unless there's something like, if there was actually a nuclear strike, obviously people are not going to be running into that area. But I'm talking about everywhere else. So witnessing and understanding and making a decision very quickly that this is what's happening, so that you can then put whatever plan you have in place. And God forbid you didn't plan. Now you have moments to figure out what you're going to do.
Just on your comment about people being angry and mad, I would say that the majority of people are already there, angry and mad.
That's right.
Because of their addiction to things like SSRIs that amplify that stuff, not to mention the effects of the Charlie 19 thing.
Well, and not only that, Chris, this won't be setting us free, right? This isn't somebody coming to, now we're going to have freedom afterwards. So it'll be a completely different situation.
Yeah, 100%. So before we go into segment 3, I want to address this question. It's a good question. Does the EMP shield work with lightning? My buddy had it, thought he was covered, lost all his electronics after a lightning strike on his house in Tennessee. So I already mentioned this earlier, but I'll mention it again. You have to have the EMP shield for your home on a dedicated ground rod, preferably an 8-foot ground rod, and running directly that, because if you share the same ground rod as your panel, there's a potential for it to backfeed and do exactly what you're saying here. So dedicated ground for the EMP shield. And it also comes, when you buy the EMP shield devices, comes with $25,000 coverage on either your deductible, or if you don't go through your insurance at all and you just need to replace electronics that got smoked by a lightning strike, not an EMP strike, and lightning strike, which on average is about 900,000 to 1 million volts, by the way, then it will be covered in that particular instance. So moving into segment number 3. Oops, I went to Cleat by accident there. Apologies. Operator error. Segment number 3, the quiet after what comes when the radios die. Once the grid is down and cell towers are gone, the only voices left on the air belong to the people who prepared for this exact moment. Ham operators, GMRS networks. GMRS is kind of iffy because a lot of GMRS depends on repeaters, and most repeaters would be smoked by an EMP. Military and government continuity systems, and the silence between those signals is kind of what would define the new operational picture. First 90 days separate the prepared from everyone else. Food distribution collapses inside 7 to 10 days. Pharmaceuticals run out inside 2 weeks. Civil order phrase in direct proportion to population density, which means the airwaves carry the only intelligence picture you have beyond what is happening on your own street. What you hear, what you don't hear in the days after the lights go out is the single most important data point for deciding whether to shelter, move, or defend in place. And that's actually where we're going to pick up tomorrow night. But tonight, we've got this last segment to cover. Mike, coming to you. I wanted to get your take on a similar question I asked Randy earlier. Once commercial cellular and internet networks are gone, realistically 72 hours in, what's still operating from a comms perspective, and what's left, is anybody in control of them, or is it just a free-for-all on shortwave HF?
I think it's just shortwave HF and then Starlink. We saw this after the hurricane devastated rural inland North Carolina, and how weeks afterwards there was nobody. Months afterwards, even helping people with their situations. They couldn't get vehicles inside. They couldn't get all the communications experts in there to erect new lines. And so the only thing they were using was Starlink and shortwave HF. And so I think ultimately it's just a lesson learned that, and I just did this last week. I did a little comms block talking about that POC 1 Ultra, the new POC Link radio, which uses Wi-Fi and then piggybacks off of the LTE networks. Is you just got to be diverse. And one of the best ways to be diverse is SATCOMs. And the best commercial SAT setup that I've seen is the Starlink. I have 3 of them: the Starlink Mini, the Roam, and the House variant. And now I'm setting up my power contingencies for powering that in the worst case scenario, because you could still use your cell phone sending SMS. If you have an Apple iPhone, you could be sending iMessages over the horizon via a satellite communications, but also looking at important information like what's coming out for emergency response. And so I think it's important to have that contingency in place, because you're not going to have much after an EMP.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So just quickly, Mike's talking about the POC Link radios. These ones here that have the blue on them, these are the Ultra ones. So they do FRS, OTA over the air, which is 16 channels, maybe a mile, best case scenario range in town. But again, they hook onto LTE, long-term evolution, AK, 4G, and have incredible compression on the sound. This is my wheelhouse, systems and network engineer for many years. And the sound quality is phenomenal. The new one he's talking about is the one that has the orange on it. And this is the POC Link Pro, and it does not do FRS. It does Wi-Fi and it does LTE. And here's an interesting thing. I want to say maybe 6 months ago, Marin County, north side of the Bay Area in San Francisco, 911 went down, which is apparently a regular thing, Keith Graves tells me, for that area. And all 3 major cell carriers went down as well. So if somebody had a POC Link Pro, like if your group, your family had these, Wi-Fi internet stayed up while everything else went down. They would have been able to communicate over these radios. So there's no panacea. There's not like one comms device that rules them all that'll work no matter what. Even shortwave HF, because shortwave HF introduced a thing called the skip zone. So it goes up, hits the ionosphere, comes down. That gap in between is called the skip zone. Mike mentioned satellite. Son of a bitch, you got 3 Starlinks. I only have 2. Now I have to step it up on that as well. But the Garmin InReach Mini 2, the Mini 3 is out now. It's quite a bit more expensive. It's like 500 or so, 450 to 500. You can get the Mini 2 now for anywhere from $250 to $300. Price changes all the time, but this allows your phone to connect to the satellite network, the Iridium satellite network to be specific. And as long as the ground stations, called NOCs, network operation centers, are functional, then you can communicate using these. So with all that being said, I'm trying to remember who I got to open with this time. Khalid, I guess. I'm used to always going Jeff. So Khalid, or actually, sorry, we already opened with Mike with the first question. You get the second one. My Sumtimers is kicking in, right? In your estimation, Khalid, and you've seen some pretty hairy environments. Why is amateur radio, ham radio, whether it be shortwave HF, GMRS, become the single most important civilian intelligence source after a high altitude EMP?
Well, the easiest way I can put that is the people that are running ham radio are the people that have been preparing for these kinds of incidents to happen. So they have the most information, they have the most intelligence, they have the biggest networks. They are ready for whatever is going to happen, and they can guide you in whatever is happening. The problem we've got with most people is that people don't even own radios anymore. FM, AM radio isn't unheard of anymore. And when you start talking about ham radio and mesh and all of this, people are going, what? Huh? What? Because we've gotten so into, online everything, online music, MP3s on our phones, Spotify, all of this. People have forgotten the things that are going to save them down the road. Ham radio is one of those things that no matter where you are in the world, no matter where you're stuck, ham radio, shortwave radio, if you've got the radio, you can hear what's happening in any part of the world. And if you don't understand it, go buy a shortwave radio and start tuning through it and start hearing how many different languages you hear on a shortwave dial.
Yeah, that's an understatement for sure. Just want to show something quickly here. I typically do an annual SHTF comm series on the latest stuff. So the 2026 Survival Dispatch SHTF comm series, parts 1 and part 2 are already out there for the public. So if you go to survivaldispatch.news, click on the search up here, just type in SHTF comms like that, and you'll see them come up, part 1 and part 2. So part 1 is on all the satellite related stuff, Starlink, Garmin InReach, Iridium phones, all that kind of stuff. Part 2 is all the handheld survival radios. Part 3, we're filming either this weekend or the following weekend, which will be the Walking Dead type solutions like the shortwave HF. And it's going to be a beast of a video because Dr. Mike and I have spent a tremendous amount of time and money on it to come up with the stuff that works the best for you, so you don't have to spend the money to figure it all out. Jeff, how does a preparedness household, for lack of a better term, build a working comms network, let's say with their church, any other groups that they're part of, their neighbors, their extended family, before the shit hits the fan? Because it's not something that you do after the shit hits the fan.
No, certainly not. It's probably going to be layered. Neighbors, you can go with shorter range, cheaper, GMRS, that kind of thing. But if you're going to be dealing with a larger group, it's going to depend on the distance you have to cover in the terrain. If they're all within 5-10 miles and you've got a big enough, a broadcast unit, a little transmitter, that may be enough. And you might be able to do it using ham or even GMRS, or basically glorified CB. But if it's further and you can't reach them through what I consider relatively low-tech radio needs, you may have to go with the satellite. You may have to go with the POC link. Now, if the people you're talking to are also prepared and they also have backup power supply and they have Starlink and you have Starlink and a generator, you can talk to them through the internet communications. So sometimes you might even be able to you do a VoIP or you do something along those lines. So you could do Telegram or even Signal, assuming the entire grid isn't down everywhere. But you're gonna have to do an assessment of who you have to talk to, how far away are they, is the terrain favorable to a system A or system B, and then acquire those systems as needed.
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is just go to survivaldispatch.news, search on SHTF comms. Those articles include videos. They are super comprehensive. Randy, I want to hear from a Green Beret's perspective. What would the absence of signals, like expected signals on the airwaves, tell you about the operational picture wherever you may be?
Well, silence on normal channels usually means the event was widespread and severe. Lack of emergency broadcast or military traffic suggests either heavy damage to infrastructure or deliberate control of information. It signals you should assume the worst and stay in a defensive posture. I would say that's what that means. I mean, otherwise, right now, even you go out, there's no silence anywhere. But, now if every signal is gone and you don't hear anything, that's probably what it means.
Yeah, true story. So, Mike, I got to ask you a question. How many of these have you had today?
2 of those so far.
So how many 1970 square bodies did you say you had?
5.
you are the king of addiction. Okay. You've got all of us addicted to Wasatch Wagyu jerky.
That's part of the plan.
We're all addicted to Carnivalt. Mike is 6'1" and taller than I am, and we both weigh over 230 pounds. All Mike's fault. Now he's introduced us to these things. I'm thinking of rebranding Survival Dispatch to Survival Dispatch Grocery Store or food something. I think that might work. But coming back to the military side of things, Mike, open source Russian and Chinese military writings have described these super EMP weapons that exceed the EMP's commission benchmark, which again is the plan that just hasn't been deployed to protect our grid. I'm curious what your thoughts are as far as the assumptions that were made by that commission to protect our grid. Are the measures that they've put out there, which again have not been implemented because Congress won't spend a measly $5 billion on it, are they insufficient? Or do you think that some of this is blustering on the part of the Chinese and Russians? I mean, they're both, famous for that. But from a military perspective, I'm curious what your thoughts are on their, super EMPs.
Well, I think that was probably the point of Space Force in that organization. I remember when Fort Belvoir kicked up basically cyber force, a cyber action force to counter all these issues that we're talking about. And the integration of tech. They're pretty good at forecasting that kind of thing. I do have some experience working for the NRO or with the NRO during combat operations, like at a special missions unit. And I was both impressed and also scared because the NRO is not really talked about, the National Reconnaissance Organization. And the only people privy to that are very specific elements in the CIA, NSA, and the military. And I think we got a lot of that covered. I would say that, though, one of the biggest threats that I've considered is we think about ICBMs that are planted throughout the United States as an attack component, but it's also a counter attack component to our defense strategy. What happens when that ICBM launches out of Nevada and intercepts, a Russian munition that's, coming over Canada, and then that entire intent of that munition was to EMP or to be struck by ICBM type counterattack, and then it explodes an EMP on purpose over the country because it's intercepting it. Hopefully, it's not the United States and it's Canada being intercepted. What I mean. And I just think there's a lot of this that we don't really focus our energy on. And the results of that was recent. I think it was last year. They did some tests and some audits over the nuclear ICBM program, and it was really bad. The reports were really bad. Basically, we had outdated equipment. Recently, the nuclear chief was just fired. It had something to do with codes, apparently. And there's some conspiracies there. But I think a lot of those things that we don't focus our energy on and we become complacent at are because they're not front and center. And those are the things that adversaries in third world countries living in caves sometimes take advantage of. We're so high speed and technically immersed and privy in AI, but we're not covering down on the basics like a guy from California running through a checkpoint. It's just we don't think about the basic necessities of setting up a blocking position or a chicane or, whatever it is, the simple actions that you could do because we want to be so high speed. And in fact, I know we're going to get into it, but they advertised they had sensors and facial recognition in advance that could track all of the guests coming in to see if they had guns or to see if they were on the guest list because it was tracking their retinas, but they didn't have a line of security that could just block a human being from running in between them and completely missed them, by the way.
Yeah, crazy stuff. By the way, I mean, we'll defer to Cleve because he's older. He's like my age. So he can be ray of sunshine number 1. You can be ray of sunshine number 2, Mike.
Yeah.
Just say
You can't get sunshine in the cave in Afghanistan, Khalid. That's part of the
Nope.
protocol. You just can't. You got to get vitamin D.
There you go. Oh, hold on.
And we did our best to provide light down there. We did.
Artificial light.
That's awesome.
Hey, we're trying to carry on your mission over here. We're doing our best, but you can't get sunshine in the cave. That's not going to happen.
That's too funny. Khalid, there's some intelligence out there that says North Korea now has ICBMs capable of reaching America. I want you to comment on that, whether there's any substance to that. Iran has demonstrated sea launch capability previously. I don't think that they have that capability anymore, but I want you to comment on that. And realistically, what would the risk of an HEMP strike be on the United States regardless of the adversary? So number 1, North Korea ICBMs, can they reach the homeland? Number 2, the technology that Iran previously had in their Navy to do sea launch capabilities, and timeline if and when an adversary hits us with a HEMP.
Well, North Korea does have ICBMs that can reach the homeland. They supplied them to Iran. We've now seen them with our own eyes. They have a 9,700 mile range, which means if you fired from inside of Iran, you could easily hit the East Coast and half of the Midwest from Iranian territory. That was supplied to them by the North Koreans. So yes, they do have the ICBM technology. Iran used to have the ability to be able to fire from the sea. That has now been greatly diminished. They will have it again because the Russians and the Chinese are working very closely with them to rebuild that technology. There's a thing that Iran's working on right now with the Chinese that we got a glimpse of over the past couple of weeks, but we didn't get a chance to really get into it. They've got this really weird technology now that it kind of mirrors the US's DO weapons, but it's not the same level. It was supplied to them by the Chinese, but they're still working on how they want to deploy it, and they're trying to figure out a way to deploy it to their proxy warriors. That means Hezbollah, Hamas, TDA, the Venezuelan cartels. They're trying to figure out how to deploy it there. So they're learning it in Iran. They're going to fly those people into Iran or a neighboring happy country, a friendly country for Iran, and teach them how to use it and then deploy them into the Western Hemisphere. So Iran is playing a lot of dirty games. We found out a lot of things because of the negotiations that are happening in Pakistan. Some of the IRGC guys really are dumb when they start talking because they start running their mouths about things they shouldn't be talking about. So they told us a lot of things that we shouldn't know. But Iran is a very big threat, and we're expecting. And I'm gonna put this the way as carefully as I can, so I'm not disappeared. We're expecting that the war between Iran and the US is going to kick off again in the next 96 hours.
Ray of sunshine.
Did you give them alcohol, Khalid? That's what it was, right?
They have alcohol
You know
in
how-
Iran. They don't have a problem with drinking alcohol in Iran.
No, I mean, because when you get somebody a little buzz, they just talk.
The
They'll
truth
talk
show.
about all kinds of-
Oh, these Persians are great, Randy. These Persians are great. They sit down in Pakistan and they don't even think about what they're saying. They start rattling off to us. And I'm sitting in the group and I'm going, you don't know who I am. You don't know who I work for. And here you are running your mouth in front of me.
So this is how they brag then, huh?
Yeah. It's like a retired spy who starts talking about everything he's done, forgetting that some of those things may actually be active operations still running. And they go, oh, we did this and we've got this going on. We've got this going on. I'm going, interesting. Let me write about this.
Too funny. Jeff, you get final closing comments on segment number 3. And then we're going to do a new segment on the Smith family. And then Mike and Khalid, Jeff and Randy are going to weigh in on this attempted assassination over the weekend. So, Jeff, when the radios go quiet, let's say day 3, day 7, day 14, what's the framework? What's the right framework for deciding whether you should move, defend in place, link up with a mutual assistance group if you have one? What are the things that make you decide what to do in that scenario? Pardon me.
Well, I would look at my proximity to a major city because they're going to turn to shit quickly. But I think you got to have a little bit of patience. You got to wait till at least one night, because what you want to do is turn on your radio, FM and AM radio, at night to see what you can pick up. AM travels much better at night than it does during the day. If you can't pick up anything at night, there's a problem. That means the outage is extremely widespread. It could be localized, and you're not going to pick up your local stations or your local FM stations, and maybe the phone system goes down and everything else. But okay, I'm in Tucson. Tucson goes down, and it's just Tucson. I should still be able to pick up radio stations out of Phoenix. And if Phoenix has gone down, especially if it's at night, I should be able to pick up X-Rock 80 out of Juarez, Mexico, or something. If you can't pick up anything, that means it's widespread. Also, that tells you if you can pick up radio stations from 100 miles to the east, then that area probably has not been affected by the EMP. So that might be an option. If you have to bug out somewhere, you want to go somewhere where you have services. If you said, I'm going to go west, but you pick up absolutely no radio stations from the west, that means they have been affected by it, and you may not be improving your situation by going there. So you need to gather information, and sometimes the lack of information is itself information.
Amazing answer, Jeff. A quick audience poll for those of you who would love to have Jeff, Mike Glover, Randy, and Khalid in your your mutual assistance group. Put one in the live chat. You don't want me in your live chat because I'll eat all the food and there'll be nothing left for all y'all. So that's all there is to it. So we're going to
just ask Cindy.
She doesn't know I have the, don't tell Cindy about the hidden Wasatch Wahoo in my office. Anyway, we're going to move into a brand new segment. We're not doing the practical payoff for America Under Siege. We're doing the Smith family context, and there's a reason that we're doing this. I created this fictional family almost a year ago. I started writing content with it 6 months ago and just released it in Remnant this following weekend, or past weekend, pardon me. And I'll explain a little bit more on that in a second. But the reason I invented the Smith family, because everybody knows the Smith family. It's your average American family. And we're going to use them for a 5 to 10 minute max segment in each episode of America Under Siege to say, okay, well, here's the Smith family that you're familiar with, and here's how this particular calamity affects them and the decisions that they would make as an average American family. Now, with that being said, the Smith family gets reset every night in America Under Siege. I'm just using them as basically an average American family's point of view in SDN, America Under Siege. So this podcast, okay? They essentially, they ground each episode and the threat in a familiar, relatable household. It's strictly a narrative device, nothing more. And again, each episode they reset, but this gives you a view of how it would affect an average American family. Mark Smith, 40. He's a VP at a regional bank in Atlanta. You've got Sarah Smith, who's an RN, 38 years old. Jake Smith, who's a senior, 17 years old. And Emily, who's 12. And they live in Canton, Georgia, about 28 miles outside of the Atlanta city core. So you've got them in America Under Siege as that point of context. But then we've got the Remnant series, which is my fictional audio podcast that I just launched this past weekend. And I want to show you all a couple things before we get into the Smith segment here for tonight's episode on EMP strikes. So if you go to survivaldispatchremnant.com, this is what you will see. This first article up top is pinned. It describes the entire series. It describes the the Smith family and their dog Casey, who's a real dog, by the way. Casey was my dog, and gives you the lowdown on all of them. But if you just go to survivaldispatchremnant.com, I'll put it out there. There's a ton of content. The podcast, again, was released just this past weekend, and check out the reviews. So I'll just read this quickly. The reviews started rolling in within hours of me releasing this, and they didn't read like polite good job comments you get on a typical podcast launch. People were gripped. So a few that stopped me. Wow, Chris, what an awesome first episode. Not to take anything away from any of the characters in the story, but I felt like Mark never knew Sarah, his wife, he had married. While her humanity is so evident, she is so much a loving wife, mother, and organizer of the family nucleus. Casey is such a loving and loyal dog, and so much of the Smith family goes on. That's from our good friend John Fernandez. Next one from Angela. Wow, Chris, my breathing slowed and I was laser focused, hanging on every detail I was hearing. That's only part of it. Next one from Rama. I was hanging on every word, had my blood pressure up a bit a couple times. I agree with nothing special. I was on edge, waiting for just another slight indicator. And it goes on. John Treble, and I've listened to his is interesting. He said he's listened to every single post-apocalyptic podcast on Apple iTunes since 2000. And he said this is his one of his favorite. So the whole point behind the Remnant podcast is a realistic rendition of The Walking Dead. So in other words, there's no woke bullshit, number one. Number two, there's no fake zombies or anything that couldn't really exist. The things that happen really do exist. And there's going to be familiar faces. You're going to run into Mike Glover in some episodes. Randy will be there. JJ Morris will be there. Sheriff Mark Lamb will be there. Jeff MD will be there. Khalid will be there when he brings his militia. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but he's gonna bring some heat with him. So to get into the effect of tonight on the Smith family, let me just quickly run through this again. Bear with me. This is the first time we've used the Smith family in this context, and then I've got 3 questions for the panel, and then we will be moving into everybody's breakdown of what just happened on the weekend with latest assassination attempt. So Mark's truck suddenly rolled to a dead stop in the center of lane I-95, I-75, that's a typo, 3 miles from his exit, as every dashboard light and the radio died in the same instant. There was a complete absence of any starter click, warning chime, or mechanical response when he repeatedly turned the key. An eerie silence fell over the interstate as every vehicle behind him coasted to a stop with no hazard lights and no honking. So I think we wrapped up with Jeff, so I'm going to come to you, Randy. Randy, what would your immediate thoughts and actions be if you were Mark on the highway at that particular moment in time? And then same question for you, Mike, after Randy.
Man, I'm sorry. Let me look at this real. Go to the catch me next. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yep. No problem.
Apologize.
So Mike, what's your immediate thoughts going to be and actions if you were Mark in that moment on the highway?
Which moment? Can you repeat it?
Yeah, his truck is stopping instantly on I-75, 3 miles from his exit, and it just breaks down. No starter click, no chime, just eerie silence everywhere.
Oh, what's my first action?
Yeah.
Well, my first action is to check the problem. I mean, if we're assuming that it was a potential EMP attack, then I'm not going to be in the vehicle that's likely going to be EMP proof. But if it breaks down, I'm just going to go into my contingency plan for where I am. If I'm in the middle of nowhere, I'm going to contact via a pretty robust comms plan. I travel usually everywhere I go with my family with the things that we talked about, with a lot of redundancy. Some of it that's just like I've been carrying around for years, even as a contractor for the agency. So I'm going to have the inReach device with SMS capability. I might even have a Starlink Mini inside my rig, because I carry my Starlink Mini antenna in a Starbat lithium battery box that could transmit through the lid of it. So I'm going to have communications, and then I'm just going to contact the friends in the vicinity to come QRF me or to recover me. A lot of the rigs I've been carrying around recently, I have bikes attached to them. Sometimes it's for recreation. Sometimes I just leave it on because I'm like, if something happens and my 1980s rig breaks down, at least I have a contingency for getting on a bicycle and moving out.
What if you were in a densely populated area, Mike?
I'm not in densely populated areas. I just don't roll that way. If I am, just happens to be. In most urban centers, I typically have a pretty robust plan for people who live in those cities. I have Jack Osborne's a friend of mine, and every time I go to visit him in LA, he knows if something hits the fan, we're breaking contact and going out to his rural ranch. But I have a whole network of friends like Jack in the middle of cities that I know are preppers that are going to help me get out of harm's way if need be. So if you do live in a city or you frequent a city to visit, have a network. It's the same thing that I tell people if they're going somewhere overseas. If you don't have a local network of people that you know and trust overseas, and you're in X country, you're SOL.
Yeah, great point, Mike. I was going to give you props for that. And by the way, Mike is not kidding when he says he's friends with Jack Osborne. He sent me pictures at Jack Osborne's, bug out location, fancy bug out location. And the first thing he sends me is Jack Osborne eating carnival. I shit, he's Mike Glover's like a vice pusher. He pushes all the vices on all
everybody fat.
Or
lean. We're all getting lean.
That's how Mike wins, right? He makes us all fat and slow, and then he's in control of everything from there.
Fat and juicy. Get all you guys fat and juicy.
There, God, now you do sound like The Walking Dead and Terminus. I want to show this quickly just because you mentioned it, Mike. Interesting point on your part. I just published a video last week called "Get Home or Die." 28 miles, one e-bike, get home or die. That's set during a CCTA in Atlanta, starring Mark Smith, who we're talking about right now. And through the power of AI, I'm able to appear in the video with Mark Smith. So it's interesting. Just go to survivaldispatch.news. You'll find the video right there. Randy, I'm going to roll you into this next question with Jeff. So Mark watched a semi-truck driver still gripping the wheel while a red sedan drifted into the guardrail, showing the sudden widespread paralysis of all traffic. His attempts to revive his phone and handheld two-way radio both failed completely. He stepped out into the unnaturally quiet highway and saw multiple aircraft contrails bending and breaking as planes began falling from the sky. So, Jeff, I'll come to you first, then Randy. How realistic is this chain of events in an HEMP, high-altitude EMP, and what survival decisions would you make right there on the spot?
Well, it's very realistic. If you're you're within the affected radius of an EMP, yeah, airplanes will crash, cars will cease to function, at least new cars. Old cars may keep going. But yeah, I think the first thing you need to do is say, okay, I need to get home, and I'm not going to do it in this car because it's dead. I mean, once you've checked it, made sure it's dead. If everybody else's is dead too, yours is dead. There's no way it just jumped over yours. Then go through the car, figure out what I need to take with me, what's in the car that I absolutely need to take with me, and then start mentally plotting a safe route to get home. And that may not be a straight line, because if that's going to take you through the worst part of town, you don't want to go that way. But yeah, you got to start assume your car's gone and move on. It's just a thing. And after an EMP, it's a dead thing. So there's no point in sticking with it.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody else could hear it, but I'm watching backstage here. All this talk about food by Mike Glover. Randy just destroyed 1,000 calories in that short window.
I heard
your dogs know it, because now they're going, where's mine?
I forgot that I did not have, I left the mic on that time instead of off. But that's you caught me doing that the last time. That's why I didn't know what you had said. I'm like, oh no, I was just sitting here eating.
Oh my God. So Randy, give me your thoughts on how realistic that scenario is, and what would your survival decisions be right there in the roadside?
Well, clearly, yes, it is. And I'm just going to say, maybe have you a little bag of chips. that came with my sandwich for lunch today. No, it's a very realistic situation. And it's certainly, if you know that your vehicles and everybody else is shut down and you see some aircraft fall out of the sky, then that's going to be your indication that things just went south and there's no turning back. So then you're obviously, hopefully you're prepared. You pull out your go bag, as Mike described. Might not be as robust as his, but you're going to have your items and you're going to move. And hopefully you listen to us. And in that go bag is what? A paper map. Ho-ho! That you can use, because you may not. Now, if you're on your way home from work, maybe you already have your other ways of getting home if you knew you were going to have to walk. Maybe you have those already worked out. But let's say you don't, then you're going to need that paper map, or you had to go somewhere else on the way home that day, and you're between there and home, which is a different route that you don't really have plans for. You're going to try to, you're going to try to be the gray man at this point. You're definitely going to want to keep moving, and you want to get it out of sight. As many, if you can get to some kind of wood line, that would probably be better. If you're in the middle of the city, I would just keep moving. Again, go by that paper map. And as Jeff also mentioned, you're not going to go by the areas that you know that you might be discovered, or there's a lot going on. Or if you see as you're coming in that there's a lot going on, you might want to avoid that and go around it. It may take you longer, but it's definitely going to be safer.
Question for you as a Green Beret, then one question for Clede, one for Mike, and then we're going to talk about this assassination attempt. Randy, how important is it to have extra socks and comfortable footwear in your get home bag?
Well, you don't have to be a Green Beret to embrace this, because, of course but I already knew, because the moment I went into basic training for the infantry, the drill sergeants was one of the first things they started saying. And then you hear it even in the infantry from platoon sergeants and everybody else that knows. Well, everybody that has experience tells you don't go cheap on your feet. And then it doesn't matter any kind of movement like that, even 10 miles, heck, probably even 5, but certainly more than that. And if you had to go 20 miles, which could happen, you're going to want to have some extra socks, because when those get wet from sweat, you're going to want to dry those out, or it's going to cause blisters, all kinds of bad things. And, in a situation like this, certainly where now you may be walking for quite a bit of time after that, the last thing you want to do is damage your feet, because guess what? You damage those puppies, you're not going anywhere. And if you're in a bad area, that means you're not going to get out of there either with bad feet. It's just a simple fact. And it's something that they pound into you in the infantry, and certainly into special operations, where you're not always in a vehicle, but guess what? You're going to get to carry a bunch of extra weight just because.
Randy, you remember, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, where you and I did a video on get home bags, and we suggested that people have extra socks, and we got flamed.
Yeah.
Complete idiots. Why would you have extra socks? It's unbelievable, the stupidity of some people. But
well, not only that, because how much room do socks really take up? We're not talking about 100 pair of socks.
Right.
Have you 2, 3, 4 pair of socks? That's it. And it doesn't take up that much room. And guess what? They're not even heavy.
Yeah, exactly. So, Khalid, in this instance tonight, so we've got a high altitude EMP strike hits. We're talking about the average American family, aka the Smith family. Sarah Smith is 38. She's an RN. She's at home when this HEMP hits. So she basically turned off everything in the house, while she was folding laundry. She stops folding laundry. She turns off all the switches in the house. She looks out the window, sees the entire neighborhood go dark at once. The neighbor's desperately trying to, revive his weapon of mass distraction. And as soon as she saw that, she started filling everything with water, just like we discussed earlier. As a family at home, how critical was Sarah's quick thinking on water? And what else do you think she should have done in those initial moments, Clede?
Well, the first things you have to do, when something like this happens, the first things, if you're at home, the first things you do, water, secure your food, secure your house, and make sure you're armed. Because those are the four things that are going to become very important to you. Whether you are talking about being in an apartment, whether you're talking about being in a house, whether you're talking about being in a ranch out in the woods someplace, your four most critical things: water, food, security, and if you have it, a backup electricity system. Most people don't. And no matter how much we have talked about this, Chris, most people still have not gotten to the point of going, yeah, we need to invest the money into a solution of some kind so we have backup power.
My mistake.
When
I hit the
no,
wrong maximize button. Sorry.
no issue. When we see this happen in third world countries, because it happens here all the time, the first thing that people don't think about is water. And as soon as the water runs out, they're going, oh, now what do we do? And we're all looking at them going, God, how are you an idiot? You've lived here your entire lives. I've been here this many years and I know to do it. And you guys have lived here your entire lives and you still don't know. The first thing you need to do is water. The second thing is you need to make sure that your food is secure. Perishable goods need to be moved to a place, or your children need to be told to stop opening the refrigerator door so much, stop looking inside so the food stays cool for as long as we can possibly stay cool for. The third thing, security. If you have a weapon, make sure you have it within arm's reach. Don't leave it someplace where you gotta go hunting for it. When you were talking about cars stopping on the highways, the first thing I was thinking was grab the backpack, get the gun out of your holster, reach behind the back seat, get your rifle, and go find someplace to duck into until you can figure out what's going on. Get off the road. Because as long as you're sitting on the road, you're an open target. The same thing is true with homes. Any bad actor that's roaming through a neighborhood and they see a home that's not prepared, that's the first home they hit. And all these people are saying that, oh, we are conspiracy theorists and oh, we are fear mongers. We're not fear mongers. What we can read the signs, we can connect the dots, we see what's coming. And if you're not ready for it, it's your body they'll be picking up off the road, not mine.
Quick question for you, Khalid, before I go to Mike for the very last question on this, and then you all can get into the assassination attempt. So theoretically speaking, you said to make sure that you protect your food, okay? Yep. So here's my question for you. What do you do with your Carnivalt, your Wasatch Wagyu, and your Primal Power when Mike Glover knocks at your door in the midst of this situation?
That's why you get a really great wall safe and you put it inside there, you lock it up, and you put a picture over top of it, and you don't tell anybody where it is.
So you let Mike come in, clear your house, he finds nothing, he leaves, then you eat the Carnivalt, the Wasatch Wagyu, and the Primal Power. All right. Okay, so final hypothetical here, Mike. So the HEMP hits, the kids react with shock, their tablets go black in the middle of a game. The kids keep pressing, the buttons, and they're trying to get people on their phone. They're trying to send text messages. Nothing's working. Mark completes his long walk home with a blister. So from the interstate where he broke down, still carrying his dead radio, but he's now reunited with Sarah in the entryway. And so the Smith family sits down for a candlelight dinner where Mark describes, the chaos on the interstate, and Sarah shared the water situation and the kids' fears. How important is that type of family reunion moment? And what should the Smiths be discussing first at the table?
Yeah, I think one, it's smart to break bread and do things that you normally would do. Periodically, I take my kids out in the backyard with a backdrop of the mountains, and we do fires and we do chats, and we roast marshmallows over fires like I did when I was a kid, and I think that's going to calm them down because they're super nervous, and get them in at least a mindset to be able to hear the information and not to be thinking about fear and impending doom. It's easy for people to do that, and I think this is very biblical, but that's men's role. I mean, the first failure of that was Adam in the garden when he decided not to just ignore what was going on specifically, but to be very complacent and tap out and not lead and not be present in that. And I think that's a time and an opportunity for especially a father and a man to step up and lead his family. We don't need passive people in circumstances like this. And I think that's really smart to do. You sit down, you break bread with your family, and you develop normalcy. Something you always notice in these situations that have been reflected in history is people trying to retain some type of normalcy. It happened when Americans were fighting Germans and they decided to put down their arms and break bread over Christmas tradition. And then the following day, they just got back to killing each other. That's an opportunity for you as a family to get them in the right mindset and then start talking about the next steps.
A great choice of words, by the way. As you're saying that, I'm thinking to myself, normalcy bias, right? People want to get back to the baseline as fast as they possibly can. So here's how we're going to wrap up on the assassination attempt. I want to show you all one thing quickly. Sorry, wrong one. Let me get it up here. Apologies for that. I want to thank everybody for their support of Survival Dispatch Remnant. I'm going to start throwing some links in the live chat as soon as I put everybody else together on stage to discuss the assassination attempt. I'm going to back out of it because these four guys are experts. But right there on Substack, you can see Survival Dispatch Remnant. We are number one. We went straight to number one after 8 days of publishing the first article. First episode was published on day number 9, Saturday. Second episode was published yesterday on Sunday, but we're number one. And I highly recommend that you check it out because it's great, not real entertainment, but you get real survival skills and guidance and all that good stuff with it. So with that being said, Mike, I'm going to have you kick it off. I'm going to take myself off stage. The four of you, I want to hear all your thoughts on the assassination.
Oh, like that, just like that, huh? So yeah, this assassination attempt was the president this morning and members of the FBI, the attorney general. I even heard Patel bragging about how good his law enforcement officers did. And I analyzed the entire event in nauseum because that's what I do, and looked at the security footage, looked at many elements of people's reactions and even Secret Service's reactions. And I expect more of an agency whose entire job is to protect the president and cabinet members and politicians. That's their only job. They don't have anything else to do. That's their one job. So when it's go time and they're being critiqued, well, guess what? That's what you signed up for. You get critiqued. And so what I saw was a lapse in security, basic security measures, a lapse from people who went into the event in their narratives and their commentary, explaining how they weren't checked, how the tickets weren't even looked at, and there's a whole bunch of excuses. What we know now is a suspect, this gentleman named Cole. What's his full name?
Cole Allen.
Cole Allen.
From Torrance, California, decided to go in. He checked in, I believe, the same day that this attack happened, and about 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when you heard gunfire erupting. One of the main issues that I have is how he penetrated on the second floor, the actual security checkpoint that probably connected from the hotel, which was the Hilton, into the area where this venue was taking place. Now, this isn't the first security issue this place has had. They've had security errors and issues before in the past. Here's a perfect example. When he penetrated the security, apparently had a shotgun, which was identified by Politico or one of the organizations, The Guardian, as a Mossberg 12 gauge with a collapsible or foldable stock, a pistol or pistols and knives. He might have had one pistol and then knives was plural, and he had several knives. When he ran towards the checkpoint included uniformed, meaning in military style tactical gear, and and non-uniformed in suits, Secret Service officials that were protecting the venue. He ran in between them. The video that I assessed was one of the uniformed officers started engaging him. You could see the flashes from the muzzle of his pistol, and engaged him while he was running past one of the Secret Service agents in the suits. It looked to me like if that was one of the guys that was allegedly shot in his chest plate or his carrier or his bulletproof vest, as described by Trump after the event, that there could have been a friendly fire incident that took place in that moment. And I just looked this up while we were talking because I made that assumption based on the video, but several people have made the same assumption that it looks like there's a friendly fire incident that took place because there was a significant crossfire of him engaging the guy as he was running and then continuing to engage him as he ran right in front of another officer. And some people would say, well, that's just sometimes that happens. And I would agree to that to some extent, but their posturing was poor. They were hanging out like they were just hanging out, smoking and joking on the curb. They weren't in a security posture. They were actually BSing, if you ask me, as somebody who is an expert at identifying men, especially that wear the uniform, BSing. The two guys who were in uniforms were literally looking at each other, talking and laughing. The other guy was just hanging out by himself, and that guy was able to run in between them. Now, yes, second floor, yes, stairwell, and yes, another breach point to get into that venue. But if he got into that venue with that shotgun and was able to just get a few rounds off, he would have created a mass casualty circumstance. And in my opinion, it shows a lapse in security. I have many more examples of that, but I'll hand off the microphone. Is Chris eating right now?
Chris is still there. He's in the background. Look, I've had a problem with the Secret Service for quite a while now, because we have seen a number of close calls after Butler, where the Secret Service has been, and in my very honest opinion, asleep at the wheel. We had the attempted breach of the White House gate, where they drove a vehicle right up to the gate of the gates of the White House, and were able to hit the gate without anybody engaging. We had J.D. Vance and President Trump verbally accosted inside of a Washington, D.C. restaurant. Secret Service standing alongside, and no one did anything. You had a problem with the president's plane. You had in London, you had an individual who was able to get very close to the motorcade. I echo what Mike just said. The single job of the Secret Service is to protect the president and the vice president. That is your only job. If you cannot protect the president, if you have an event where you have a number of people attending, and yes, they're journalists. Yes, there are very high value people and high worth individuals there. For you not to be able to protect the security of that location, that raises a lot of questions. The problem I've got is that this is now the fifth attempt on Donald Trump. And it comes at a time when the US and Iran are in a discussion to try and find a way out of a war. We know that Iran has been planning for a long time retribution for Qasem Soleimani's killing. On Dead Drop Intel, we wrote about the Arbeser attack that was carried out on the Saudi ambassador at a Washington, D.C. restaurant, and how there was a lot of learning that was put into that for the IRGC to be able to carry out additional attacks. There are too many things that are happening, and people are looking at them in isolation, and they're not connecting dots. When you start connecting dots, you start to have to wonder, what is the U.S. security establishment doing? In the past 2 months, you have had drones flying over military bases. You have had drones flying over where your cabinet members are staying at military bases. You have had close calls with the president. You have had a war that has gone out of control in Iran. You've had Iran making open threats that they will get revenge. Too many pieces are in play, and too many people are looking at them from an isolation point of view. That, well, this isn't connected to this, and this isn't connected to this, and this isn't connected to this. And when you are not connecting the dots, and this is the one thing we do at Command 11 is we play the what if game, and we red team out this stuff. We sit down and go, listen, if he'd breached that one point and gotten into the stairwell, and in the stairwell he'd opened fire, that's a mass casualty event. Had he gotten down the stairwell and into the hall and opened fire, that's a mass casualty event. Any way you look at this, this is a massive security breach. And the number of excuses we're hearing from the administration on how this happened, why this happened, how certain things were allowed to happen, there has to be a serious investigation into what really happened, because Trump has been shot once, and he literally, if he had not turned his head, we would not have Donald Trump as president today. Things like this, and even when we looked at Butler was the same thing. There were too many questions about how the Butler shooting was allowed to happen. You had snipers sitting on the roof, and the snipers did not engage with a man on top of a building with a gun and did not engage. Here you've got the same thing, just like Mike said. He went through the security barricade. Opening fire and friendly fire incidents, yes, they do happen, but they don't happen the way they happened the other night at the correspondence dinner. That is bad muzzle awareness, flat out. And Mike, you and Randy can confirm this. That's just bad muzzle awareness, to not know where you're shooting and what you're shooting at. So for me, this is just another line of mistakes that the Secret Service made, because no one's asking the question, why is this being allowed to happen?
Well, I guess I'll go, Jeff. You don't want.
Go ahead. I guess we're going to talk about it.
I will just say that, you know what? I think it's a bunch of crap. For one, it's being allowed to happen. Now, I don't think Trump's doing it. Of course not. Nobody wants to get themselves killed, and that's a fact. And, you know, you got all these people saying, oh, it was fake, and he's doing this for his ratings. Yeah, he went out and convinced a Democrat to come through there and either get killed or go to prison for the rest of his life so he can raise his ratings. That's just absurdity. And I'll take this to a further point. And I told this story once before in a different context, probably a couple of years ago. So when I was right after I left the military, I was the director of programs for the Green Beret Foundation for 4 years. And during that time, I went up to all the groups, right? And I went to all their formals and everything else. So one of the years I went to 10th Group's formal, which is in Fort Carson in Colorado Springs, or right there. And so I stayed at it's the nicest, what is it? It's a Hilton, but it's in the Hilton chain. I'll think of it in a second, but it's another hotel that's right there in Colorado Springs, and apparently that's where everybody stays. So I leave the morning and I go on up to Fort Carson, and I go to where 10th Group is, and I go talk to them, and I spend all day there. And I think the formal and a family day or something. So this was the family day. So later that afternoon when I leave, and this is 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I leave and I head back to the DoubleTree and in Colorado Springs. And when I get to the DoubleTree, now I see all the drives have been blocked off. They're barricaded off. And then I also notice some cones that go into this lane and around the corner. And then I notice there's a line of cars inside these cones. And so I pull in and I get in line. And I sit there for 30 or 45 minutes. And there's only a few vehicles in front of me. However, one of them was a 4Runner that apparently they were coming for vacation for a month, or they were doing a month or two vacation, because their entire, I think it was like a 4Runner, the entire vehicle was full of bags. And I watched as these people had them a little tent out where everybody had to pull up the close vehicle. And there were guys there that then pulled out everything out of this vehicle and went through it all. And then each vehicle did the same thing. As I get up and it's my turn, then I noticed the pin on these guys' shirts, because none of them had their jackets on, but they were Secret Service pins. And then I find out the reason they're there is because the next morning Obama's going to be coming in, right? Obama's going to be coming in to speak into a room. He's not going to be staying at this place, but he's going to come speak at a meeting in the morning at like 10 in the morning. So the night before, they've already locked this whole thing down. They went through all of our stuff. Now, I didn't have my bags with me because I'd already checked in a day or two before that. So I suppose if you'd have checked in then, maybe. But my point is, this guy came in that day or the day before. And if this would have been Obama, you would not have got through there without they would have went through all your stuff, all of it. Because I watched. I sat in this line forever and finally got through, and it was because Obama was coming the next day. And if we go back to the JFK assassination, it's very well known now and documented that for whatever reason, they did not have the regular amount of Secret Service there. It was far less. And a lot of things were different, just like Butler, Pennsylvania. So all these people that keep saying that Trump's doing this to himself, you're an idiot. And for another, again, it's because they're not doing their job, because that didn't happen at the DoubleTree where I was, because they went through everybody's stuff. Now they're just allowing people to come in. And then when you look at the videos that Mike mentioned, not only is that guy firing, I get maybe that's why the guy didn't charge at him, but let's go back to the video of where that nutball took shots at Ronald Reagan. And let's look at how those Secret Service agents acted during that moment, where they all went and were around the president and then took him in, to the point several of them got shot, including Brady, right through the head. And now you go back and look at the Butler PA video. That took too long to happen. You look at those people there. When that guy ran through, those people, most of them were running for their own security and safety. No one actually charged the guy and plowed into him to stop him, which is what should have happened, and maybe at the same time with the gun. But regardless, nothing happened as it should. And then looking at the way those guys, as Mike talked about, that is a severe lack of training, because that guy's in uniform. You go do live fire trainings with your buddies for this exact reason. So you're both not shooting each other when the adrenaline goes through the roof because a bad guy just entered the room with a gun.
Jeff, you get final say. Then, Mike, I have a really quick question for you, and then you all can go, and Clete and I will carry on with the sit rep.
What struck me about this thing is, it was a fiasco, obviously, was there was no layered defense. Normally you have an outer ring, a middle ring, and an inner ring. So by the time someone gets to that inner ring, which is the last line of defense before the principles you're trying to protect, they have already, or should have already, gone through at least two more rings. In Afghanistan, we had guys outside the wall, we had guys at the wall, and then we had a defensive position inside the wall around our, the building itself. And I had a fighting position if we were attacked. And it was, I was inside third floor, I had a machine gun, and we practiced that. What looked to me was they had like the Keystone Cops on the outside and then more Keystone Cops inside. And I think probably the guys relaxed because everybody was inside. Okay, the thing is starting. They're starting to serve dinner. Okay, our job is mostly done. Well, obviously it wasn't mostly done. And how you can hold an event and have the president go to an event in a place where you simply cannot have a layered defense posture is stupid to me. And the irony that this is the same place where Reagan was shot is like, dude, that's called a clue. Like they say, history may not repeat itself, but it sure as hell rhymes. I think the location selection was horrible. Okay, if it's any event, fine. If it's a wedding, who gives a rat's ass? But the president, the vice president, and half the damn cabinet were there. And you have one layer of defense that some guy can go from his hotel room and walk down and have to get through one line with multiple guns and attack the president of the United States. Whoever set this up should be freaking flogged, then fired, and then lose their pension.
Yeah, good point, Jeff. Mike, final question to you. What happens if half a dozen operators, head of launch the attack instead of one guy. Half a dozen trained operators.
Lost audio.
Uh-oh. We
I
lost
lost audio.
Well, that's an easy question to answer. We don't need Mike. If a team of operators went there instead of that one guy, they would have killed the entire room. Entire room. All the security, the cabinet, and there wouldn't have been anybody stealing wine bottles. That's for sure.
Yeah,
So I could hear
story.
Randy. What was the question, Randy?
So he asked hey, Mike, if a team of operators went in there, trained operators, instead of one lone guy, what would have happened?
Oh yeah, they would have all died. And I wanted to add this caveat because it ties into this. One of their security protocols was to evacuate everybody onto the streets of DC, and they had them protected by the local police department, the Metropolitan DC Police Department. So one, everybody converged in this area, including National Guards men and women, which in my Reacts video, you see a line of National Guards men and women who are MPs, who qualify with like a 92F in basic training, a Beretta in basic training. And that's the extent of all their weapons training. Like it's like a day. And they're running into the building in full kit, most of them not carrying a pistol, and some of them carrying pistols like at their crotch, very low, because they don't know how to handle guns. So you're talking about a Keystone Cop circumstance. What if the entire point was to send in a guy to get the response that you wanted, to get people to start moving, and then do secondary attacks? They could have just took vehicles and ran them all over because all of them were standing on the road. Now I think the cabinet members were evacuated, but that could have been a perfect example of a comprehensive or complex attack that they played right into because of their lack of security, and how long it took them to evacuate Trump. JD Vance was evacuated in about 10 seconds. 13 seconds later, Trump was evacuated. It was a complete nightmare. Sorry, I can't hear you, Chris.
Well, I'll say this. Thank you guys for your input on everything. Look forward to seeing y'all on the next one. Stay with us, though. Don't go anywhere because Khalid is going to start off by regaling us with his adventures over the past couple weeks, and then we'll do a very short sit rep after that. Everybody else, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yep. See you guys.
All
Have
right.
a good one,
Okay.
Khalid.
All right.
We'll
Thanks,
see ya.
guys.
Good night,
Mike, Chris.
All you, Khalid.
Those.
Oops. Hey, Khalid, start over again. I clicked the wrong button.
All right. 2 weeks of very interesting travels. In the past 2 weeks, I have been inside of 7 different countries. I'm not going to name the countries for my own security, but 7 different countries we've been inside of. I have seen things that I never thought I would ever see. The interesting part in the whole thing is I always thought that Pakistan was the testing ground for what happens in the rest of the world. It's actually not. I think it's called East Africa. That is the area where they test out all the techniques before they bring them into the Indian subcontinent. And then from there, they roll them out into Europe and into the West. What we've seen over the past couple of weeks, one, we've had some major intelligence grabs. We'll be talking about those on Command 11 with some of the things we're writing. For those of you who haven't been on the Command 11 website in a while, the boys have really done some really hard work. They have really ramped up things we've got running on Command 11. And this is what I was told when I got back. They said they've got an entire terror group profile glossary set up that will be rolling out this week. There's an interactive map that shows you where they're based at as well. They've done some really hard work on building an intelligence platform that the person who does not know anything about intelligence gathering or how intelligence works can get a lot of information in what is happening. Part of the reason why we've changed our format is because we're tired of writing the fun fluff stories about what's happening around the world, and we want to get back into what we do what we do best, and that is kinetic operations and intelligence gathering. So you're seeing a shift now from our side at Command 11, and we're focusing more on that. So what you're going to see over the next week and a half is we're going to talk about a lot of the intelligence that we've picked up. We've gotten our hands on 3 different manuals that have been prepared for terror groups, for non-state actors, and for transnational criminal organizations on how to use drones as weapons. They're proper training manuals. They are proper manuals that explain step by step how to use a drone for intelligence gathering, for surveillance, for reconnaissance, and as a logistics weapon. So these 3 manuals were in the process of translating from Arabic, Russian, and Pashto, which is the languages spoken in Afghanistan, into English, so that we can put these up online and let you guys download them and get an understanding of how the bad actors are being trained. This past week, I was inside of a country that is very hostile to the US, and they don't show their hostility. That's the interesting part, that if you were to look at them and look at how they deal with the United States, you would never think they're hostile towards the US. But the amount of hostility inside of that country towards the US government, towards Donald Trump specifically, towards the Trump administration, it's unbelievable. We've gotten some documents out of there as well. We have a couple of assets inside of the government there that handed over some very interesting memos that have been written about the administration that we'll be talking about down the line as we get more of an understanding of what those documents are tied to. The US today is looking at least 5 different types of bad actors. Not only do you have the war going on in Iran, which we believe in the next 96 hours is going to kick off again, because Iran has put forward a plan saying we will accept a deal in 3 phases. Phase number 1, fighting stops, and you give us guarantees that neither Lebanon nor Iran will be attacked. Phase number 2, we sit down and we start negotiating, and we start talking about what we will and will not accept. Phase number 3 is when the nuclear option is put on the table, and they start talking about Iran's nuclear weapons and what they're willing to give up in return for those to hand over nuclear power to their nuclear weapons to the US. Donald Trump is making a lot of statements, and because of those statements, there's a lot of problems inside of Iran trying to build a consensus. You have 3 warring parties inside of Iran that are fighting for power. You have a group inside the IRGC, which is trying to create their own power move inside of the Iran to take over control. You have the Irani parliament leaders that are trying to take control. You have the former Shah, who is absolutely useless. He has no support inside of Iran. He's trying to build a support base of some kind. You've got the US trying to fund and arm a militia group inside of Iran, just like they did with Afghanistan, to fight the Mullah and IRGC government, which is absolutely failed. You have Iran working with Russia, China, North Korea to build up a weapons stockpile because they know an attack is coming. Russia has openly told them that prepare for an attack because the US is using the negotiations as a stall tactic, and they are getting ready to hit you again. So the statement that was made in Islamabad by the Irani foreign minister was, we will trust Pakistan as our negotiator, as our mediator, but we will not trust the US because the US has shown us that we cannot trust the US when they talk. The problem there is when you're talking about how you're going to stabilize a country, how you're going to bring a country to the negotiating table, when there's not a level of trust on the US side and there's not a level of trust on the Irani side, there's no one that can sit in the middle. None of the GCC countries are willing to sit. And when I say GCC countries, I'm talking about the Arab countries: Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Muscat. None of these countries are trustworthy enough to sit in the middle and negotiate a deal. We do not want Qatar sitting in the middle because we know Qatar is a dirty player. So we do not want Qatar sitting in the middle of this conversation. When you are dealing with a situation like this, you don't have a lot of room to work with, which is why we believe the war is going to kick off again. Uh, all of last week, Islamabad was shut down. That is the nation's capital here in Pakistan. The whole country the whole city was shut down. Certain areas were no-go areas where if you were not a resident of that area or you did not have to go to work in that area, you were not allowed to you were not even allowed to drive through that place. Now, there's a lot of disinformation going on. We're being told one thing while something else is being discussed behind the scenes. And the only reason I'm privy to that is because we have been inside the room, we have been inside the conversation, we've heard what's being said. There's been a lot of things that have been put on the table for Iran that we don't think have been made public to the US media yet. And I'm not going to say anything until I have had a look at the US media and seen what the US media has reported. Because there are some things that really bugged me when I saw them, that how could the US make this kind of an offer when, this is not good for anything. The biggest thing that we're having a problem with on our side is Iran is being told that if they will put their nuclear program on hold for 20 years, the US will provide them with billions, that's a B, billions of dollars in aid and in releasing funds from from banks in the West where Iranian funds have been seized. You give Iran that kind of money without rehabilitating that government, you've created yourself a bigger enemy than anyone you could have ever expected. Again, there's a lot of things that we know that we're not talking about because there are things that I want to confirm. I've only been back for maybe a couple of days. And I have not had enough time to catch back up with everything that's going on. I've gotten basic reports while I was out in the field. Since I've gotten back, there have been stacks of intelligence reports that I need to read through. So as I get more of a handle on what's happening with the Iran-US negotiations, I'll give you more understanding on what's happening behind the scenes. The attack on Trump, while it's being blamed on a radicalized teacher, I don't think that this is that simple of a conversation. Everything, and if you've listened to Survival Dispatch a couple weeks ago when we were talking about radicalization, the New Orleans attacker connected to ISIS, the Palm Springs attack on the fertility center connected to ISIS, the radicalization that happens online, there's always an ISIS virtual handler in there someplace. If you've had a chance to download and read our counterterrorism assessment for 2026, we went into a lot of detail of explaining how radicalization happens and how the ISIS virtual handlers take advantage of different groups, different forums to funnel people into their pipeline so they can radicalize them to the point where they carry out an attack. The more this attacker is investigated, the more we're going to find out where his connections really are. I honestly believe that we are going to find out that he is connected in some way to a terror group, whether through a spider network or directly connected. We're going to find out he was connected somehow. And I'm holding off on making any kind of a open statement about that because, again, I've only been back for a couple of days and I'm trying to get my feet back onto the ground on what's happening in the intelligence world. The attack on Donald Trump, when it happened, I went, this cannot be a single soul attack because, like I said, when the four of us were talking, there have been too many mistakes by the Secret Service and they have been brushed under the carpet without anyone asking any questions. This could have been a massive mass casualty event. This could have been something much, much more significant than a couple Secret Service agents being shot and injured. you cannot look at this from the point of view of this was a one-off event. There's something else behind this. And as long as you keep looking at things as a one-off event and not connecting dots backwards, you're going to miss the whole picture behind you. And Chris, I'm going to leave it with that because there's a lot of things that have happened. There's a lot of things that are still floating in the air. And the more that we keep our ears to the ground, the more we're going to hear what's really happening. There's a lot of disinformation floating around, Chris. There's a lot of people spreading rumors. I heard a video where Caroline Levitt's husband was saying something about to the journalists at the correspondence dinner that, we should be really careful. There's going to be, and that's where the conversation cut off. Again, I don't think anyone's that dumb that they're going to make that kind of a statement at the correspondence dinner, but there's a wave and everyone knows something's about to happen in the US. Just no one's ready for what's about to happen. You're on mute, Chris.
Fuck, with Khalid won, Chris. I've actually been winning lately against Jeff and Randy on that. That's too much. All I said though was you're a ray of sunshine, Khalid, as per usual.
I try to be, Chris. I try and be.
All right, let's get into a short sit rep here, and then we'll wrap up. So this one kills me here. From not the comments in this post, but the comments from the mainstream media. Federal prosecutors have published photos of the weapons found in the possession of Trump attempted assassin suspect Cole Thomas Allen. So we've got a shotgun, a pistol, handful of knives. Khalid, did you catch the American mainstream media saying that he had this deadly arsenal of guns?
Yeah, I saw that. Yep, I did see that. Like I said, Chris, people are taking advantage of this in two different ways. One, people are saying that Trump did this so that they could win the midterm elections, which is absolute bullshit. Two, people are saying, well, he had so many weapons, or he had this, or he had that. The first reports that came in were that he had been shot dead, and that wasn't true either. Again, I wish the mainstream media would go, okay, wait a minute, listen, we are going to go with the two source verification before we say anything. But they're talking live, and whatever anyone is saying is being broadcast, and no one's thinking about the impact it's going to have.
Yeah, no kidding. By the way, while you were giving everybody an update, I might have wiped out some Wasatch Wagyu. You haven't seen the Primal Power yet. The Primal Power stuff. Stay tuned for more details on that. But damn you, Mike Glover, for giving me another advice. So for the sit rep, for those of you still hanging with us, just a handful of interesting things from my X bookmarks. Some of it related to the events of the weekend, some of it not, like this one. This isn't sci-fi anymore. American company Joby Aviation just flew their battery-powered eVTOL, so vertical takeoff landing, air taxi over New York City today. Early ride price when it goes live potentially next year, around $200 if you've got it. Check this out, Khalid.
A first of its kind electric air taxi demonstration took off from Kennedy Airport
and made the short trip to the West 30th Street heliport. At 11 a.m. this morning, if you were to drive that 16 miles, it would take more than an hour. In this cutting-edge plane, roughly 7 minutes. Joby Aviation's goal is to make this type of travel the gold standard, pointing out several pluses.
All I can think of, Khalid, is the Jetsons. It looks like a giant.
I was exactly going to say that. Meet George Jetson.
You just dated yourself to our generation there. I have not had a chance to watch this video. I hear it's pretty epic on whatever this freak is, Rose something. Apparently she imploded in Congress today. Let's take a quick look at it because multiple people have sent it to me and said she loses her shit. I think it's over maybe like the climate hysteria baloney, but let's see what it is. If it's no good, we'll just stop it, move on to the next one.
When climate change is flooding our streets, poisoning our air, driving up healthcare and disaster costs, how can the EPA justify abandoning that duty to protect Americans to appease polluters under the false flag of economic growth?
Following the law, Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, where does it say anything about fighting global climate change? Loper break. Supreme Court case. You're familiar with it?
No, maybe others are. I'm not. But let me ask.
But
you
that's
this.
really important. As a member of Congress, Loper Bright says that we as an agency don't have the authority to get creative. If Section 202 of the Clean Air Act.
No, but you don't have, excuse me, you do not have the right to say climate change does not exist, that it's a hoax, and that's where this administration
I
is
understand
coming
you're
from.
upset that you don't know what Loper Bright is. Do you know what the major policies doctrine is?
I'm upset because
You know what the major policies doctrine is?
You know what, let me just
You're a
say this
member
to
of
you.
Congress. You should know.
Well, you have moved from someone who defended the environment to all of a sudden
I'm very
making
defensive
a-
about not knowing the two biggest landmark Supreme Court cases of the last
and
year
you are
with
very,
regards to your
you are
question.
very defensive about changing your policy and your positions with regard to the environment. Now,
Okay.
you just
Do
tell
you want me to tell you what the two biggest
No, I
Supreme
want
Court
you to
cases
tell
are of the
me-
last few years?
This is what I want you
Michigan
to tell
versus
me.
EPA,
Whoa.
West Virginia versus EPA.
You know, you're here because you need money from us. So halt for the second and wait for the questions and answer the questions.
Well, I answered your question,
you
and you
didn't.
didn't like my answer because
did
you
not
don't know what
answer the
Loper Bright is,
question.
because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is,
Chairman,
because
is
you're
this how to
asking me,
answer questions?
you're asking me about Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, and you don't read it. You don't know what it says.
Listen, and what you want to do is to deny. You want
No,
to
I actually read the law. I do my homework.
really.
You're just somebody who likes to have the microphone on. You know what I have to do? I read the law.
You know,
I
Mr.
read the
Chairman, I don't
Supreme
have to
Court
listen to
cases.
this, and I would say
No,
this,
what you should do
that
for your
this-
constituents is actually
this-
read
this
statute.
budget is at real risk.
Read
Let
your
me tell
Supreme
you,
Court.
This is the Appropriations Committee.
Oh,
you come here.
you care
and
about
you tell
science? Now
us-
you're threatening to defund it?
Oh my God! No, you don't fund
Because
science.
you don't know what Loper
You
Bright
are
is,
climate
because you don't know what the
deniers.
major policies
You are
doctrine is. Your
climate
message
deniers.
to our folks at the EPA is that you want to
I don't
defund
have
us.
to listen to this BS.
BS. You think I made up these cases?
Yeah, I think you have made up a
I
whole
made
lot of
I made
BS.
up Loper Bright. I made up West Virginia versus EPA. I made up Michigan versus EPA.
Woe is right.
Oh, that was epic. What do you think of that, Khalid? Good for him.
Chris, this is the problem with congressmen and congresswomen. They will pass laws that they have never read, and then they will go on the pulpit and they will stand there and they will beat issues that they have passed laws that don't have any sense to defend. There is no climate change law. And you want to talk climate change? Pass a fucking law. And then we'll talk climate change.
What an epic meltdown, though. What bunch
Just absolute crazies.
lunatics. Just a lunatic, right?
Yeah, but the purple hair, Chris, that should have been the set off for it. I mean, she had purple hair.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This one from Bree, one of our loyal followers. She says she always looks pissed, but Wall Street Ape says this is horrifying. Rep. Lauren Boebert, they're scanning our faces in public places at protests, even our children's school. The government's building a secret database. They can blah, blah, blah. This is all Palantir, folks. Flock cameras, Palantir, and basically what you saw in Terminator, literally 54 seconds.
They're scanning our faces in public places, at protests, even at our children's schools. The government is building secret databases they can go through anytime that they feel like it. They're blanketing our neighborhoods with flock cameras, and every single one of you should be saying, "What the flock?" I mean, this is an absolute egregious reach on our Fourth Amendment rights. They're creating a digital footprint of your entire life without a single warrant or even probable cause. Your morning commute to work, it's tracked. Dropping off your kids at their soccer practice, that's logged. Visiting a church or a gun range, recorded forever in a government accessible database.
So against the Fourth Amendment, Khalid. This shit is out of control. Give me your thoughts on Palantir and Flock and what you just described.
Well, you know I love Palantir. I mean, it's my favorite company in the world. I mean, I wish everything was Palantir. Donald Trump, when he came into office, gave Palantir a contract to build a database of the American public. If anyone doesn't believe me, go ahead and pop into Google and put in Donald Trump database Palantir, and you'll find the story where he gave Palantir an open contract to access banking information, health records, driving records, criminal records, and build a national database. That was what the Trump administration did. This is not a secret database. This is something that was there. What I don't understand is just now, Palantir's been given control of the USDA as well. So now your food supply is in Palantir's control. So let's see. Your driver's license, your criminal records, your immigration records, your food, and your banking records are all monitored by Palantir. And no one controls Palantir. And I was back for a couple of days last week, and I saw Alex Karp's 22-point manifesto that he put out, that what the world should be like. And I went, are you kidding me? Palantir has been the worst thing that could have ever happened to the American people that could ever be brought into reality. Block cameras, we all put those in our own houses. Doorbell, the Ring cameras, we all put them in our own houses. No one forced us to do that. We put them in our own houses. These smartphones we carry around with us, with location services on, with Google tracking on, 90% of us don't even know how much of our lives are tracked by our phones alone. And you carry them everywhere you go. And then let's just go into the other side of it. How much do you post on Facebook? How many pictures do you put up there? How much of your life do you talk about there? No, you and I don't even touch Facebook, and I'm watching the green check on Facebook to see if we get kicked off.
Just like you got to kick Twitch tonight for the first time.
The whole world posts on Facebook. That the CIA is watching everything you post there, and they have built a pattern of life on you from there. You have given them the right, because social media has become such an integral part of your life, from Instagram to TikTok to Facebook to WhatsApp. You have given them access to everything. So what are you complaining about? You don't want them to do it? Stop using these apps.
Yep, exactly. That's so obvious. What's Jeff Nicholas always say? It's too stupid to be stupid.
Yeah.
So this video I'm going to play just because it's a great example of the entitledness, but also our audience knows this, but most Americans don't. We are at war with radical Muslims, jihadis. And this is a great example of the entitledness. These people have to be removed from our country. No ifs, ands, or buts, whether it be done peacefully or not. They have to be removed from our country.
Ma'am, I need you to take a seat.
Why am I being arrested?
We told you.
He tried to. What do you mean? He tried to kill me. He tried to assassinate me.
Ma'am, please take a seat.
I am a woman.
Thank you.
You're touching me, even though I told you I'm a Muslim.
Thank
You're
you.
still touching me.
Ma'am,
Okay.
I'm gonna buckle you up, okay?
Okay.
For safety. So can you sit back?
You're gonna pay for this, you know? Do not touch me. Do not come close to me.
Can you scoot this
Do
way a
not
little
come
bit?
close to me. You know I'm a Muslim.
Can you scoot this way a little bit?
You know I'm a Muslim. Islamophobia. You did it. You did your Islamophobia.
Can you scoot
You
this
did
way
it, and you
just a little bit
protected
so
your
I can
own
get
white
the
people.
seatbelt on?
You ordered it. You ordered it, and you protected your own white people.
Then I will
Okay.
you
You know the Muhammad is gonna take it. You know the Muhammad is gonna take it. Assault, you liar. Thank you.
I'm gonna unbuckle you. We're gonna have you step back out. My female partner here is gonna do the search.
You know, one of your people tried to kill me, right, female? Why are you getting close to my breast? You just touched my breast with your chest.
Okay, step out, ma'am.
You
I'm
know
gonna
your
pat
own
you down.
people tried to
Ma'am,
kill
step
me,
out.
No?
Step out.
The same behavior, you never change?
Ma'am, step out.
You're
Turn
gonna pay
around.
for this.
Face the car.
You're gonna pay for what you did. There's no player in the game, and you know it. Do not humiliate me. Right? The
I'm
Muhammad?
doing my job.
The Muhammad? Right, you're gonna pay
Ma'am,
for this.
listen, do you have anything in your
You
pocket?
attack me?
Ma'am,
No, it's a lawsuit.
stop.
It's a lawsuit.
Do you have anything in your pockets?
Islamophobic. You're Islamophobic. You protected your own white people. Knowing very well that he tried to kill me. Yep, you know him very well that he tried to kill me.
Spread your feet apart.
Islamophobic. Don't get in my... Do not touch my privacy. Do not touch my private. Right? I am a Muslim. Islamophobic. I am a Muslim.
Okay, have a seat.
It goes on and gets worse, believe it or not, Khalid. Give me your thoughts on this insanity.
Buy a plane ticket, go back to the country you came from. If you are so offended by the laws of the country you have moved to, go back to the country you came from. This is not a difficult thing. You cannot go to another country and impose your values upon them. That is not what you went to that country for. You went there for opportunity. You did not go there to conquer it. I have a problem with these people in Pakistan as well. Pakistan is a Muslim country, but when you try and teach me my religion, get ready to get smacked across the face, because I don't practice my religion based on what you tell me. I practice my religion based on what I have learned from the religious texts that I have read. You don't have the right to teach me what I should and shouldn't do. And the number of times he said Islamophobia, I really wish that sheriff had stopped and said, "Okay, can you explain to me what Islamophobia means? Because we're not against Islam. You've committed a crime. We are doing what law enforcement does when you commit a crime. This is not religious based. This is not based on who you follow or where you follow or where you worship. This is because you committed a crime and you're not cooperating with the law enforcement. You do that in a Muslim country. Do that in Dubai. Don't cooperate with the police in Dubai. They will pick up a stick and they will smack you across the head. They won't even hesitate."
So let me say this, Clean. I mentioned last week while you were gone, but phobia is from a Greek word that essentially means, afraid of something. And I said the same thing I'm fixing to say right here. All of you fucking idiots from third world shithole countries that are Muslim or anything else, we are not afraid of you. Get it through your fucking skull. We are not afraid of you. So you can take your Islamophobia, shove it up your fucking ass. You want a war, you should be careful what you wish for, because it's not going to be fucking pretty, and you sure as fuck aren't going to win. Let me say that. So speaking of which, here's another piece of shit from Somalia. I don't work, you do, and you pay for me. Yeah, right now, because we have a horribly broken system, this is not sustainable, will not last.
You work all fucking day, you don't got shit. Thank you for working so hard so I can be home all day, free. I can use my EBT. Go to work for me, white boy, white girl. Yeah, go to work for me, you fucking white animals. Fucking work for me. Yeah, you fucking work for me. And the U.S. government they work for me. All of you work for me. Now go to work. Pay them taxes. Take care of me and my people. All right? This is my land. I control this place. This is my reality. You all gonna be enchained. I'm gonna lock all you guys up if you don't pay your taxes. You better fucking pay your taxes.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna freeze on the eyes here. Haven't done this in quite some while. This guy doesn't have SSRIs. He's just straight up fucking retarded idiot. But if you want to use the SSRI scale, how many thousands milligrams of SSRIs do you have to take a day to look like this? But you got to keep it. You can tell he's from Somalia because they have upwards of 90% homogeneity, meaning that they're all a bunch of inbred fucking idiots. The average IQ in Somalia is under 70. That is the level of retardation as far as any civilized country is concerned. We have been invaded, and this is unsustainable. It will not last, and it's going to get really ugly. And you fuckers picked a fight with the wrong people, because look, there's people saying 20,000 manly. That's 20,000 milligrams. You want to chime in on this asshole, Khalid?
I don't understand why they stopped deporting these people. I really don't. I really don't. Get them first arrest Ilan Omar, and then make an example of her, and then send them all back.
Hold up on that. No, here she is right here, Ilhan Omar. Okay, and this is real. This is not AI. This is how fucking stupid these Somalis and these other third world shithole animals, how stupid they are. Listen to what she says as she's reading off of her notes and gets to the part that says World War II.
The last time the Alien Enemies Act was invoked, it was used to detain and deport German, Japanese, Italian immigrants during World War XI.
World War XI.
Oh my God. And this is a member of Congress.
And she has the nerve, by the way, to tell us, what's American, what's not American. I'm telling you, man, this is not going to be pretty. It's not going to end well at all. So from the left here, Clete, here's a short compilation of mentally challenged leftists, for sure jacked up on SSRIs, and the reaction to the failure of the latest assassination attempt on Trump.
The motherfuckers missed again. Oh my God. I'm already crying.
Imagine faking your own assassination attempt for the third time, and then everybody's just upset that it wasn't real and that you didn't croak.
I wake up each morning.
By the way, this guy's this fucking limp-wristed tenderfoot is a teacher in Ohio. This is what's shaping your youngins' minds.
Hoping he has died. I go to bed each night, hoping by the time I get up in the morning, he has died. For the love of all things good, just fucking die.
They missed again? It's America. They missed again.
If somebody misses one more time, nobody wants to work these days. Nobody wants to get out there and
I check this out, Clete. I had to take my watch off tonight. I do not have my watch on for a very specific reason. What's the average daily intake of SSRIs for these clowns? I want to hear
At
from
least
the audience.
At least 10,000. At least 10,000.
10,000 milligrams stare, 10,000 milligrams of SSRIs a day.
Twice a day, 10,000 milligrams, I think, because
Twice a
there's
day?
no way you can be close to normal with Chris, the idea of a happy pill to stay this way, I don't understand what you're struggling with that you need a happy pill to stay like this.
Yeah, no kid. I'm dying. Give us some feedback from the audience here, y'all. What do you think of Clete's suggestion? 10,000 milligrams twice a day. I think he's directionally correct. So, and I've seen this fuck stick a bunch of times as well. Muslim scholar, Muslim man has the right to have 4 wives, unlimited number of sex slaves. Listen to this shit.
Female slaves as having a secondary status, even below this, and that their consent did not matter in this relationship. They were fully owned, and the master had the right to all of the woman. In essence, generally in classical Islamic thought, it is taken for granted that a Muslim man can have up to 4 wives at once. And in addition to the 4 wives, he can have an unlimited number of concubines, which refer to women who are basically have slave status. When they are owned by her master, a woman owned by her master has to freely give herself to the master. The master has the right to have sexual relations with her as though she were one of his wives. The believers are those who guard their private parts except from their wives and what their right hands possess. But curiously enough, while this is often interpreted to mean that a man could have sexual relations with his female slaves, it is never interpreted to mean that a woman could have sexual relations with her male slaves.
Number 1, a snake gets the comment of the night that all those lunatics in the last video have a constant IV drip. Well done, Snake. Good job. Khalid, where does it say in the Quran that JP 35,000 milligrams a day?
He's got that one close. He's got that one really close.
He just trumped you and Manly. Where in the Quran does it say all the shit that he just spewed?
Okay, it doesn't. First off, yes, a man can have 4 wives, but there are very specific conditions under which you can have 4 wives. The one biggest condition, Chris, is you must treat them all exactly the same. You cannot have a favorite. You cannot spend more time or more money with one, not the other. All of them must be treated exactly the same. There is not a man in the world that can treat every woman the exact same way. Not a man in the world. The idea of sex slaves, that is something that ISIS espouses. That is something that Al Qaeda espouses. That is not something that a normal Muslim espouses. Because the idea of a sex slave is, because it is something that the terrorist groups believe, they consider it a war bounty. That if they conquer a land, they are allowed to take all the unmarried women and either sell them off as sex slaves, take them as their own wives, or do with them as they wish. What I'm really interested in is in all of the crap that he just said. He never once talked about the holy shit level of homosexuality amongst Muslim men.
Go ahead and
Didn't
speak to that for a second.
Didn't even come close to mentioning, oh, by the way, if you commit sodomy in Islam, you must be hung. You must be either hung or stoned to death. That is what the law says. So it's really nice how he says, well, women are this and women are this and women are this. But he doesn't talk about the actual violations of the law that are openly carried out in Afghanistan, that are openly carried out in Syria, that are openly carried out in Iraq, that are openly carried out in the Sudan, that are openly carried out in Somalia, and no one has a thing to say about it. The law is very simple. If you have relations with a man, the village gets together, they all get stones, and they stone you to death. That's how it works. But he didn't bother to touch on that. And my biggest thing with these Islamic scholars is, it's nice how you tell us everything that you imagine for yourself. I mean, look at the guy. You couldn't get one wife. How are you talking about 4 wives? And you're talking about, oh, you're allowed to have 4 wives. You're allowed to have concubines. You're allowed to have this. You're allowed to have this. Okay, if you're allowed to, how many wives do you have? I mean, the woman interviewing him should have stopped and said, okay, excuse me, how many wives do you have? How many concubines do you have? Since you're a scholar and you're preaching this information to me, how much of it have you achieved for yourself? Most of them will say, none. This is why I, again, come back to it, and I have not said this in a long time. This is why the BFE model is the best model to work with. There is no need for a courtroom. There's no need for anything else. It is the most clean, applicable law you could ever have. Any guy acts like an asshole, put one between his eyes. Game over.
For everybody who smiled when Khalid said BFE, put a 1 in the live chat, whatever platform you're on, except for Twitch, because you got us kicked off of Twitch, but put a 1 in the live chat if you're happy to hear Khalid say that. All right, here's the last one for tonight, 47 seconds. You can already tell by the hair that this is going to be off the wall.
John Wilkes Booth, if you can hear us, if you are with us, please, John Wilkes Booth, if you're listening, please.
Let me get this straight. Dumbass! You have a fully reloaded shotgun, but you chose to use a 1-bullet.
We're not even sending our best to fucking assassinate. Because what the hell was that? Lee Harvey Oswald would never, bitch. John Wilkes Booth would never.
Today was like this close to being the best day ever.
Also, the person that at Trump at his rally was exercising that right that all of those Republicans were fighting for. So can you really blame him?
Average number of milligrams of SSRIs taken per day by the unhinged people in that last video. I don't know if you want to add anything to that or not, Cleet. I'm getting a pit bull attack here because they smell my food.
I've just got one question. I mean, you can track every single one of these videos. Why has no one gone and knocked on these people's doors and said, come, let us show you how a firearm works and how the right to bear arms works. We'll give you one, we'll take one. Let's see who has better aim and have a friendly fire incident.
Careful now. they don't get banned off social media, but that's enough that X will probably kick us to the curb. We've been there, right? But anyway, I digress again. I'm being attacked by, I've got a little girl pit bull here. She's a precious little girl. She was a bait dog used by these assholes fighting dogs. When we got her, she was horribly physically, mentally, emotionally messed up. We've had her now for 7 years, I think. And she's 12 years old, and she's one of the sweetest dogs I've ever owned. It's amazing how forgiving they can be after being treated so poorly by humans. But Cleet, I don't know if you can join us tomorrow night or not, but if you can, same time as usual, 7 p.m. Eastern. And it's the next episode, the second episode in our new series, America Under Siege, 12 story arcs with 8 episodes each, 96 total episodes. So we've got 4 episodes this week and next week on what happens after an EMP attack, what happens after the grid goes down. So tomorrow night is on the topic of silent airwaves. And one more time, I want to say thank you to all of the people who have become part of our family over at Survival Dispatch Remnant. This is an unwoke audio podcast set in a post-apocalyptic scenario with the main characters being the Smith family. Mark Smith, 40 years old, his wife Sarah, 38, their son Jake, 17, their daughter Emily, 12, in a post-apocalyptic world. The first and second episodes were released this past weekend. Episode 1 was on Saturday, episode 2 is on Sunday. Every week it'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can go back and listen to those 2 episodes. Just at the top there, you can see the second menu item says podcast. Click on that. You can listen to it for free. People who sign up for $7 a month or $70 a year get early access to every episode. They get a companion article, which is quite verbose, includes a whole bunch of extra information. They get access to our Remnant community on Substack, and they also get access to once a month. JP and Ro and Manly and the boys are going to be running webinars for Guardians on Thursday nights. And once a month, they're going to do the Remnant Roundtable, and you are going to have a chance to steer the plot in the Remnant. So I've written 104 episodes, which is obviously 52 weeks, every Saturday, Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon if you're a subscriber. Only Guardians get in the Remnant Roundtable. And like I say, you have the opportunity to shape it. So even though I've written 104 episodes, I left a variable at play where we can do some interesting things with different characters. Wait until you see what happens when Khalid comes to the United States and brings his militia of 400 badasses with him. And, he's going to make Negan look like a friggin' pussy. But the difference between this and The Walking Dead, this is all predicated on realistic things that can and will happen in a post-apocalyptic world, and real world survival strategies, survival products, guidance. The response, if you go read that first article on the left there, the reviews are in. You'll see what everybody thought of it. An incredibly successful launch. Episodes 3 and 4 come this Saturday and Sunday. Khalid, great to hear your voice. Hopefully we'll see you again this week, which, by the way, our new schedule starts this week. So SDN is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday from now on. Thursday, if we have any learning videos or anything like that, I'll publish them on Thursdays. If you're a Guardian, you'll get the webinars with JP and his team. You've got Remnant Saturday, Sunday, JJ Morris's videos Saturday morning. If you think you've got the chops to host a podcast in the survival prepping space, send an email to support@survivaldispatch.com. I may give that Thursday night slot to somebody who would like to catch a break and get some notoriety and get their voice out there. We're contemplating what we do with Thursday nights, but I can't continue working 16, 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is what I've done for almost 5 years. I acquired Survival Dispatch 5 years ago this coming summer, and physically it's taken a toll on me. And Remnant helps a lot because it means I can go back to fishing on weekends with my wife. And it also means I have Thursday for business meetings and Thursday nights for dinner with my wife. But again, if you think you got the chops for Thursday night, you want to host a podcast on survival prepping, send an email with some details, support@survivaldispatch.com. We will have a group that vets whoever may assume that position. And then again, it may not be assumed by anybody. We may just use Thursday nights for other content, but that's the schedule as of now. Clede, like I said, would love to have you back anytime tomorrow, next day, or Friday. And you haven't met Don Vandergrift yet. He's going to be with me tomorrow night. He's a great guy. Might be a good chance for you to meet him. 26-year veteran. And Randy and Jeff, of course, will be back Wednesday, and JJ Carroll will be with us on Friday. That's it. This is Chris Evan and the BFE master, Khalid Muhammad, a.k.a. Agent 00711, signing off. God bless our law enforcement officers. God bless our troops. God bless America. Enjoy the closing video. It's a brand new one.
Hear the warriors call.